Laura standing by for us. You are a genocidalist. This is not your land. Strong stuff there in Canberra this morning. Laura, do update us.
That's right, Kay. We were watching this speech. It was his keynote moment as he walked into the Great Hall of Parliament House in Canberra. The King was accompanied by a didgeridoo player, this long-planned set-piece speech he made. But nobody could have predicted what would have happened as he finished, as Senator Lidia Thorpe got to her feet, was in the middle of that aisle there, shouting, trying to make her way towards the stage. She was held back by security. The King then turning to the Prime Minister, who was sat to his side, and talking quietly to him. But it was without doubt a very confronting, a very uncomfortable moment for the King. He had recognised and spoken about Indigenous Australians and their struggle for some form of reconciliation in the speech he had made, but for many it simply didn't go far enough. Lidia Thorpe is the state of Victoria's first female Aboriginal senator. She is a senior politician known for being outspoken on these issues. It is not the first time she's done something like this, but she certainly seized the opportunity with this huge audience of who were basically the great and the good of Australia gathered to hear this momentous speech from the King. And it was interesting because earlier in the day there was a second moment. As he landed in Canberra, he was given a welcome to country ceremony and a smoking ceremony by an Indigenous Australian. She was explaining to us the importance of this ceremony. I asked her, though, after she'd met the King, whether she thought that it was a moment for the King to apologise. The scars of colonial rule are still being felt. I asked her, should the King say sorry? And she said, yes, we all have roles and responsibilities. The King has roles and responsibilities. We need to acknowledge the past. So this is a difficult situation for the King to be put in. And you do ask questions as to why it is that the King landed in Australia on Friday evening, and it's only now that the issue, that the very passionate, strong issue of Indigenous rights and campaigning is coming up. Why hadn't the King done something to look at this issue earlier on, rather than being faced with such an uncomfortable situation at the most prominent moment of his day in the capital here?
OK, Laura, thanks. Let's speak to one of those great and the good that were in the room, David Littleproud MP, leader of the Nationals, Shadow Minister for Agriculture and member for Morona. Hello to you. Thank you for joining us on the programme. Explain to us what happened.
Yeah, look, the King gave a speech, and I thought a well-received speech by the audience of prominent Australians. There was about 80 senators and members of the House of Representatives that were there. And at the end of that speech, Senator Thorpe, true to her business model, tried to make a scene. This is what Senator Thorpe does. And sadly, it's become embarrassing for her that she continues to do this at times. That's just about trying to grab attention for herself. Nothing more than that. And I think the King gave a great speech, to be candid with you. I think it was well received. And in fact, before he even spoke, the Indigenous elders of the Ngunnawal people, who are the traditional owners in Canberra, actually gave a very heartfelt welcome to country to the King and the Queen in the Great Hall. And I think that is the reflection that Indigenous Australians and all Australians took out of that event.
Does she have a point, though? She talks about the Crown stealing Aboriginal land.
Oh, we've gone through a number of court cases here in Australia around land rights that have been settled in our High Court. And that is done through our court system, our legal system. And in fact, now Aboriginal land has been handed back in parts of this country. You can't change the history. Our history is a rich one. And while we've made some mistakes in the past since British settlement, we are better having been together, and we'll be better sticking together as a nation and continuing our great journey from a history that came over 200 years ago. The world was a far different place to what it is today, a lot less complex, in an era when the world was finding itself. And literally, we're lucky that Britain found Australia.
Some suggestions that the King should apologise for colonial rule in Australia. How widely is that viewed?
Oh, look, I think that's the matter for the King. I think, obviously, in Australia here, we faced up to some of the mistakes of the past. And that wasn't ones the monarchy of the time, when Australia was first settled, actually perpetrated. In fact, the directions from the monarch in England when they came and settled in Australia was to make sure that Indigenous Australians were looked after, they were treated fairly. Unfortunately, the actual that happening in a tactile way didn't happen at a local level in some ways, and there were mistakes made by some of those early settlers. We can't take away those mistakes, but what we can do is learn from them. We've moved on as a nation, and we are better having been together and sticking together than continuing to drag this up. Our nation is a great nation, and our Indigenous Australians play a very important role in the fabric of our nation, but our history is a rich one that we are very proud of.
Just a thought before I let you go, Mr Littlepride. We know that, as you were hinting, Lidia Thorpe has previous. Are you surprised that this was even allowed to happen?
Oh, look, she's a senator, and with that comes a great privilege and ability to go into our parliament and to be able to roam free. And she should, but she isn't treating that with the respect she should. And she's using that as a business model to try and garner attention. She obviously will be up for election at the next federal election. I doubt that she'll be there after it. And so her only way of trying to maintain any semblance of relevance is to continue to undertake these stunts. The King handled it well. I think the security forces handled it well, and our nation will move on knowing who Lidia Thorpe is. We'll simply look at it and just go, this is another stunt.
Thank you for taking the time to join us on the programme this morning. Thank you. Good afternoon where you are. Thank you very much indeed, Lidia Thorpe, who is an Indigenous Australian senator, interrupting the end of the King's speech in Canberra to call him a genocidalist. She's shouted, "You are not my king. You are not our king. This is not your land." As she was escorted out by security, the King turned to the politician beside him and spoke quietly while the situation was resolved. Meantime, the Prime Minister is urging people to share their ideas and experiences of the NHS to help shape his government's 10-year plan to improve the health service. People can submit their ideas on the NHS website or app until the beginning of next year. Our political correspondent Ali Fortescue reports.
In a long-awaited budget, the NHS could be among the few winners. Cash, though, we're told, will come only with reform.
I think there is a big opportunity here for everybody, whether it's frontline staff, whether it's patients, whether it's the government, whether it's trust leaders, all to work together to bring about improved NHS services and wider public services.
And to see that improvement today, a consultation launched by the Prime Minister and the Health Secretary to shape a 10-year plan to overhaul the NHS.
There are two real political challenges here. The Prime Minister and Health Secretary need to find a way of bringing NHS staff and unions with them on the journey of reform. They also need to find a way of showing that there can be tangible results from what is a long-term plan in time for the next election.
It's helpful to have an extensive consultation exercise, but it shouldn't last too long. And what we want to see is the government using the expertise, the evidence that's available on what the long-term solutions are. And we certainly know what they are in relation to improving cancer outcomes in the United Kingdom. We need to prevent more cancers, diagnose them earlier, have more personalised treatment, and make sure that there's investment in the NHS workforce and ensuring that new treatments are brought in as quickly as possible.
Politics is about choices. The NHS, it seems, is a political priority. What that might mean for other public services will become clearer on Budget Day. Ali Fortescue, Sky News, Westminster.
And at 7:15, joined by the Health and Social Care Minister, Stephen Kinnock. Any second now, in fact.
Yes,
what have you
indeed.
got?
I've got Middle East for you. So blasts have been heard across Lebanon's capital, Beirut, overnight. That's after the Israeli military pledged to begin targeting Hezbollah's financial sites. Let's get more with our international correspondent, Alex Rossi, who's in Beirut and joins us now. Alex, what's the latest?
Well, it was a very heavy night of bombing here in Beirut. The Israeli Defense Force issued evacuation warnings to a number of areas, essentially Hezbollah strongholds, saying it was going to target a financial organisation that's affiliated to Hezbollah. It claims that Hezbollah uses it to finance it and finance, what, in its words, what it calls terror. We heard a number of explosions in the night. You can still see on the skyline behind me, that's Dahia, beyond those buildings there, smoke billowing out from those sites that were hit. We have had a statement from the organisation. It's called Al-Qad Al-Hassan, and they called the decision to target a sign of Israel's bankruptcy and assured customers it had taken measures to ensure their funds were safe. This, of course, is another significant escalation in this crisis, which does not appear to be dying down. If anything, it appears to be getting worse.
Alex, thank you so much. Around 1,500 homes and businesses in Northern Ireland remain without power this morning in the aftermath of Storm Ashley. Northern Ireland Electricity has been working to restore power to more than 10,000 customers since the storm first hit. Aircraft faced challenging conditions as they tried to land and take off, with winds reaching as high as 80 miles per hour. The screening of a documentary about the singer Pharrell Williams in London was interrupted by animal rights activists last night. Let's take a listen. The campaign group PTUK shouted and held up a banner referencing to Louis Vuitton's use of animal fur in some of its collections. Williams became the creative director of the French fashion house last year. Donald Trump put on a shift at a McDonald's food outlet in Pennsylvania. The Republican presidential candidate donned an apron to make fries great again. It comes after his Democratic rival, Kamala Harris, said she'd worked at the fast food chain when she was in college, a claim Mr. Trump says is made up.
Well, I'm looking for a job, and I've always wanted to work at McDonald's, but I never did. I'm running against somebody that said she did, but it turned out to be a totally phony story. So if you don't mind, I want to work the French fry counter.
Absolutely.
Okay, how much are you paying me?
Meanwhile, the US Vice President Kamala Harris has been given a 60th birthday performance from Stevie Wonder. The Democratic nominee for president was out rallying at churches in Georgia. That was when she was then joined by the legendary singer. Let's take a listen.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Whoop. Stephen Kinnock's here, smashing his glass on my own.
Cheers.
How are you? Thanks
very
for joining
well, thanks,
us.
Kay, yeah.
Launching a national conversation on the National Health Service. What was the point of Lord Darcy's review?
Lord Darcy's review set out the scale of the challenge that we face. He said very clearly that the NHS and care system is broken. We agree with him, but it's certainly not beaten. There's a fantastic opportunity now with this launch of this big national conversation. I'd urge all of your viewers to get involved. The online platform change.nhs.uk. We're going to have 100 events across the country feeding into a plan that's going to be published in the spring of next year. That plan is going to be about 3 big shifts from analogue to digital, from hospital to community, and from sickness to prevention. Those are going to be the big drivers for the transformation of our health and care system into a system that the country can once again be proud of, that is actually delivering in our communities and helping people to live longer. Yes, longer lives, which is great, but also healthier lives, live healthier for longer.
OK, let's unpack that a bit at a time. You say that you want patients and the public to offer their views. The NHS is underfunded, not under-reformed, says a letter signed by 10,000 bereaved families delivered to Downing Street, I should say. It's more money that's needed, not a talking shop, they say.
I think you have to have investment going hand in hand with reform. Otherwise, it's a bit like turning the taps on without fixing the plumbing first. We recognise that the NHS does require investment and funding. That's absolutely right. But it's not either or, it's both and. If you don't reform, if you don't get the basics right, fix the foundations in terms of sickness to prevention, hospital to community and analogue to digital, you'll have a system where you're pulling the levers, but it's not working properly. And I think most people across the country absolutely would agree with that, would accept that there's a frustration around the system not working as well as it should. It needs to modernise. We're absolutely committed to delivering that. But of course, we recognise that investment is also very important.
I remember having this conversation back in 2002 with Tony Blair, so I went back to have a look at the National Programme for IT, which you introduced back then. Costs ballooned from 6 to 12 billion. It was one of the most expensive public sector projects in British history at the time. It failed. It was dismantled.
I think the big advantage we have right now is that we have the app, we have a commitment to single patient records. The functionality of that app, though, is nowhere near where it should be. So we're going to introduce a data bill. My colleague Peter Kyle, the Secretary of State for Science and Technology, in next week, I think it will be, is introducing the bill, which will create the protocols that you need to share data far more effectively, so that GPs can share information with hospitals, patients can share information with GPs, patients have control over their own medical records.
That was supposed to be the case 20-odd years ago.
Well, Kay, look, we've had 14 years of Tory neglect and incompetence.
This was when you guys were in charge.
Yeah, well, we, of course,
and you had 9 years at it, and it didn't work.
Well, when Labour left office in 2010, the patient satisfaction levels were the highest since the creation of the NHS
on this
in 1948.
IT system, it didn't work.
And in the last 14 years, the Tories have squandered the golden legacy that we handed to them. So we're going to give it our best shot right now. We're going to fix it because I think the sense of urgency across the country is greater than it's ever been.
You didn't do it last time.
Well, the sense of the depth of the crisis that we're facing is it's the worst we've seen, and I think people have got that sense that we've got to fix this now. This is our last chance, as the Prime Minister has said. Reform or die.
Okay.
We're passionately committed to an NHS that's free at the point of need, but if you cherish something, you have to be prepared to change it.
OK. Between 2019 and 2023, the hospital workforce rose by 17%. In that time, surgeons performing 12% fewer operations, doctors and nurses seeing 18% fewer patients. Increasing the workforce is clearly not the answer to reducing waiting times. What is? A smartwatch? I mean, how are you going to fix it?
Well, that's where the shifts come in. I think what we've seen is that too much pressure has gone into the acute sector. The way to deal with that is to take pressure off the acute sector. The way to do that is with things like neighbourhood health centres, where you have your GP and your dietitian and your physio and your mental health support and your district nurse all in one place, so that people can be treated there in their neighbourhood rather than having to go to hospital. And then it's sickness to prevention. Look at the really interesting project we're piloting in Wolverhampton, where we've given people personalised fitness goals and incentives to eat more fruit and veg. We've seen a massive increase in steps taken, fruit and veg consumed. That's something we're looking at in terms of spreading that across the country to get people working more on their own health and keeping them away from hospital. And then, of course, the technology side is absolutely vital.
We've dealt with that, yeah?
We've looked at that. Yeah.
OK, talk to me about smartwatches. Who's going to get one?
So when you look at people who have type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure, many of those people are having to go into GP appointments or even hospital appointments to get their glucose checked or their blood pressure checked. Give them a smartwatch and they can check that at home.
How do you do that?
Well, the technology, the wearable tech, enables you to check your blood pressure. And
on a smartwatch?
Yeah, the wearable tech that you have, I think.
Are you sure?
The smartwatch and the other wearable tech that's going to be made available will enable you to do both the glucose checks and the blood pressure checks at home, so that, of course, if there are red flags, you need to go in and see your GP or go to the hospital, that's fine.
Okay.
But it's not a good use of our health services time for people to be having those repetitive appointments when they could be using tech to sort it out at home.
How are you planning to increase productivity?
Well, there's a massive challenge around productivity. Tech is a big part of the answer to that. I think also, if you look at GPs, we need to ensure that we have continuity of care. One of the challenges people have is they're going in to see a different GP every time they go into their GP surgery. That's crazy, because the more a GP knows about a particular patient, they are ready then to give them the advice they need, give them the prescription they need, And that means that that patient doesn't need to come back. So there's a big opportunity around primary care and productivity in GP surgeries. We're going to adjust the quality outcomes framework so that GPs are incentivised to have continuity of care. It's basically around bringing back the family doctor.
OK, and the reason I'm asking is because you gave junior doctors a 22% pay rise without any corresponding commitment to higher productivity.
Well, the strikes were costing the country £1.7 billion
But that's a fact,
year.
isn't it?
And all of these targets we've talked about today, none of those would have been achieved if my colleague Wes Streeting hadn't gone in and sorted out the strikes within a week of us coming into office.
Why not ask for a commitment for greater productivity at the same time?
Well, look, I think everybody's committed to greater productivity. The plan that we're putting forward, the big national conversation we're having today, productivity is going to be at the heart of that. And it's a fantastic example. It's a fantastic opportunity for everybody to get involved. That plan that we publish in the spring of next year is going to be all about driving up productivity, modernising our health and care system, keeping it free at the point of use, but in a modern setting. And the productivity side of that, both in terms of moving people away from the acute sector, so hospital to community, using tech more effectively, so analogue to digital, and getting people's lifestyles improved so that they don't have to go and use the health system in the first place. That's going to improve productivity
So why
massively.
didn't you ask junior doctors for a commitment to higher productivity when you said, there you go, 22% pay rise?
Well, I think it's absolutely built into the system that we've got to improve productivity. Every single junior doctor in the country knows that. They're totally committed to doing that. But those strikes were costing the country £1.7 billion a year. And let's not forget what we've achieved in the last 14 weeks. We've sorted out the strikes. We put 1,000 new GPs onto the front line.
Created a £9 billion black hole in the process.
We've brought legislation in for a fair pay agreement for adult social care workers, 130,000 vacancies in adult social care. We've done more in the last 14 weeks than the Tories did in 14 years.
So what are you going to do about the assisted dying bill? How are you going to vote, and what, if it goes ahead, and what impact could it have on the NHS?
I think it's great that we're having a big debate and conversation about what to do with people.
You voted in favour last time.
I voted in favour of the bill back in 2015. I need to look in detail at the bill that's been published by my colleague Kim Ledbetter, but I think it's really important that as a government minister I stay neutral on this issue, because it's just really important that we have a debate that's not, if you like, clouded by the views of government ministers.
Your boss, Keir Starmer, and Wes Streeting, suggesting that you won't be breaking manifesto promises not to raise taxes on working people, but goes on to suggest that doesn't include people who earn six figures. Explain that to me.
I'm not going to get into speculation about the budget. The Chancellor's going to set it all out.
Explain that to me.
On the 30th of October.
If you earn more than six figures, are you not a working person?
We made it absolutely clear that we won't be raising taxes on working people. That means VAT, national insurance,
even if you earn more than
£100,000.
£100,000?
We will not be breaking any of those manifesto commitments. The Chancellor will set the budget out on the 30th of October, and so there's not that long to wait.
No, but I'm just asking for clarification from your minister, if you would. If you earn more than six figures, are you no longer a working person?
The Chancellor will set this out on the 30th of October. It's absolutely clear in our manifesto.
It's not clear to me, that's why I'm asking you the question.
Yeah, but obviously the definitions have to be seen in the round, and that's what's going to be put on the table.
You're either working or you're not. I mean, if you weren't earning more than six figures and you're paying a lot of tax, then you're still a working person, surely. I was just confused about what he meant.
It just would not be appropriate for me to speculate on what the Chancellor's going to put into the budget.
I'm not asking about what the Chancellor's put in the budget. I'm asking your opinion. If you earn more than £100,000, are you still a working person?
The Chancellor's going to set all of this out on the 30th of October. Look, our manifesto made it absolutely clear that we will not be raising national insurance, income tax or VAT on working people. And that is the pledge that will be delivered.
What's your definition of a working person? Let me ask you that then.
The Chancellor will make that absolutely clear on the 30th of October.
I look forward to it. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Kay.
Thank you. So, we'll have a big debate as far as the National Health Service is concerned. That's what we're being promised by the government. That starts today, continues on until the spring as a result of Lord Darcy's investigation. That, I think, reported back in September. And as a result, we've got this big debate which will last until next spring. You can get involved if you want to, according to the Minister, by getting involved with the NHS app. Tamara's here. So many questions. Thoughts?
I think the main thought is there's no numbers in there, are there? There's no timescales, there's no amounts of money. This is a national conversation about how, I think Keir Starmer will be framing it today as how we save the NHS from this crisis. The government says it's broken and it needs rescuing over 10-year period. But we know that money is tight and we don't know what the NHS settlement will be until next week when the Chancellor sets that out. But clearly, NHS chiefs have made clear that even if it gets 3 or 4% increase, which is more than other departments expect to get, they're just going to be running to stand still. It needs to be a bigger investment than that. I think what they have learned from previous reorganisations of the NHS, like what you talked about with the National Computer back in the day...
12 billion quid.
They did, and it failed. And part of the reason was they didn't bring people with them. They didn't speak to the doctors and the patients and the people who are actually using it. So I think this exercise is intended to get everybody's views now. Of course, all these people are not going to agree, but by next spring, when this is published, to get a sense of what the people working in and using the NHS want to see, with some guiding principles like more care in the community, more use of technology like the NHS app. But in order to prevent the NHS app and the idea that we could all save doctors loads of time by having our medical records with us at every appointment, that idea could still be some years off actually working. So you've got a new government which is going to have probably a difficult winter this year before we even get a sense of what they want to do with the NHS. It could well be that we're towards the next election before people see a real impact, especially since waiting lists are still at 7.6 million. So I think it's how they show that the meagre amounts of money that are available can achieve meaningful change next year, the year after that, that's going to be a big challenge.
Yeah, handing out smartwatches, that's a lot of Christmas presents sorted, isn't it? Thanks so much, Tamara. Thank you. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News Monday morning. We've got a special report on the fight with drug abuse in Scotland and speak to the author of Train Spotting, Irvin Welsh. Fed up of paying over the odds for concert tickets? We'll tell you about a new bill that's hoping to fix that. And the remarkable moment. A message in a bottle was pulled ashore over 1,000 miles away.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Do you fear a fourth indictment? Does your government owe an apology to the British home children?
Great to see you.
Does your government owe them an apology? The fact that they were intercepted, does that indicate a military weakness on the part of Iran?
No.
Free, wherever you get your news. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. You can feel a devastating power. It had been a difficult night in a deadly storm.
Bang, bang. You can hear it hitting the windows.
Our houses are okay.
It's depressing.
As bad as all of this is, it could have been much worse. Today, this land they call sacred is at the heart of America's electric car revolution.
To me, it's a sacred ground.
The white gold rush is a race that Biden doesn't want to lose. I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world. Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States, it would appear is about to learn his fate.
Escort coming out!
San Quentin houses America's largest death row. They rarely allow cameras onto the condemned block.
James Matthews, Sky News. I want them to be treated equally like everyone else. It's one step closer to getting out, to getting off death row.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
You're diminished by claims that you're a racist.
Question?
Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding. What do you call him, sir?
He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
The most significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America? People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Coming up, we'll be speaking to Irvine Welsh, the author of Train Spotting, to discuss the UK's first taxpayer-funded safer drug consumption room. That to come. But first,
our top stories for you this morning. A senator has interrupted King Charles's speech in the Australian Parliament, yelling at him before being removed by security.
Give us our land back! Give us what you stole from us! Our bones, our skulls, our babies, our people! You destroyed our land!
Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer launches the biggest ever consultation on the health service, calling for patient experiences and ideas. Beirut is being rocked by at least 10 explosions overnight as Israel's campaign against Hezbollah continues to escalate. And claims of vote interference in Moldova as the country votes in its presidential election and on a referendum on plans to join the EU.
we have a special report now on life inside Europe's death drug capital, which is Glasgow. A so-called safer drug consumption room was due to open there today, but has been delayed. In a moment, speaking to the Train Spotting author, Irvine Welsh. But first, Conor Gillis has this report and a warning: it contains footage of substance abuse.
What have you got on you today, then?
I've got some heroin.
It's 11 a.m. on the front line of Europe's drugs epidemic.
The needles are free, and that cost me £10. £10, you know what I mean? And that's 20 ml of heroin.
How quick can you get it?
In 10 minutes.
Chris is 41, a painter and decorator turned heroin addict. Homeless, surviving in a tent, wondering if his next hit will be the one that kills him.
I just really need to get it in me.
Right,
You know what I mean?
we'll let you get on. Overwhelmed by his cravings, Chris is lured to this dark, damp, dangerous corner. Do you ever think that you don't know what's in that and that could be your last hit?
To be honest, mate, that'd be a blessing. To the way my life is, you know. Dying seems like a better life.
Glasgow has the highest rate of drugs deaths in Europe, a shameful scourge Scotland has failed to shake off. And here are the daily pavement patrols known as the Rapid Response Squad, clearing up the dangerous aftermaths of back alleys turned heroin havens.
This is one of the spots where
Chris says he's been waiting 6 months for rehab, shoplifting to fund his addiction.
I'm spending £20 for one bag. You get 2 for 30. So you've got to buy 2 for 30.
And is that a day?
Right, that's per hit. So you're having like 5 hits a day.
Could this be part of the solution? The so-called safe consumption unit preparing to open a mile down the road. This will be the UK's first dedicated place where addicts will be able to take their illegal substances under medical supervision without the fear of arrest by police. The idea is to drive everything off the streets and indoors. It's a pilot that's been years in the making. Jay, just tell me what happened.
So basically I was attacked, drugged, raped and dumped in a derelict car park. So
This is Vicky. We're protecting her identity as she gets clean after being hooked on heroin and crack, left for dead in 2019.
I had been dumped and thrown out of a moving car and I rolled over kind of onto my arm and I cut off the circulation. I was born into drugs. My mum actually gave me my first crack pipe at 14.
For the consumption rooms, I agree with it.
58-year-old Ricky has depended on drugs his whole life. He knows all too well how difficult the war on drugs is.
Well, most of the people I grew up with are dead and have died with drugs. I hope it does make a difference because it will save people's lives.
This is a city desperate for solutions, with daily deaths ravaging those who are always on the edge of society. Conor Gillis, Sky News.
Author of Trainspotting, Irvine Welch, is with us now. Hi, Irvine, it's good to see you. Thanks for taking the time to join us. How disappointed were you that the plans to open this consumption room have been delayed?
I think that in the bigger picture, I'm not sure what's what the answer is. I think it's a bold and interesting scheme, and I'd like to see it go ahead. I mean, you want to see anything that kind of stops people that stops people from putting themselves in jeopardy is something that we have to embrace.
How do you think life has changed for people in Scotland, young people and older ones, as we saw there, that are reliant on drugs from when you originally wrote your book?
I think it's got worse now because the process of deindustrialisation has continued at a pace, and it's generations that have grown up without work, without opportunities, without education, without a future, and that kind of anxiety and that kind of pain, it's just prevalent. You can see it. The hopelessness goes down generations now, and as your reporter said, it was people on the very edges of society. Well, maybe people shouldn't be on the edge of society. Maybe society has to be bigger and encompass more people.
How would decriminalisation help?
Well, I don't know if it would. I mean, but criminalisation isn't helping. So I think we're at the desperate stage where we have to try things, and we have to take drugs off the streets. We have to take them away from the criminal gangs and the empires that they build around these things. And as long as they're on the streets, there's everybody, particularly young people, have got the need for compelling drama, and they're not getting it anywhere else. They're not getting it through the world of work. They're not getting that kind of drama, that interface. So they're getting it with each other in terms of scoring, in terms of conflict, in terms of trying to find a hierarchy in the gangs that are issuing and dealing with all these drugs. So I think these are the issues that need to be addressed. And if you can decriminalise it, if you can take it away from this kind of sort of whole underground culture, then perhaps maybe it's a stage. But the thing is that everything now is in poor parts of the country, everything is set up for addiction. It's not just drugs. It's like kind of it's the horrible processed foods. It's online pornography, online gambling. Everything is set up for the cheap dopamine smash. I mean, even news programs like this are set up for the cheap dopamine smash. And people are going from one addiction to the next. So we really have to address that as a society.
What is it about Glasgow? Why is that the drug capital of Europe?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it is. I think people are doing drugs everywhere. Even people that live in kind of nice parts of London and they work in the media, even some that work in television, are doing loads of drugs, but they're getting high quality stuff basically, and by the time it percolates kind of up to places like Glasgow, it's been cut, it's been done, but it's just all sorts of nonsense in it. But the other thing is as well that in Scotland, the whole culture, I mean, if you get a very deprived part of Scotland or a very deprived part of England where people are shooting heroin, the whole culture of the hit is such a big thing in Scotland. I mean, one of the guys in your programme mentioned this, that do anything for a hit. And that goes right back to it's a cultural thing. I mean, our national drink is whiskey for a reason. It's not beer as it is in England. And when I moved to London in the 80s, I noticed that most people were smoking heroin off the foil rather than injecting. And when you're injecting, you're having that hit, but you're also much more vulnerable to drug overdose. You're much more vulnerable to infection through needles. So I think there's a cultural thing that exists in Scotland about the hit and about that idea of a cocktail of drugs as well, which you don't have so much down south. That idea that we seek oblivion at all costs, and that's been a kind of important part of and terrible part really of Scottish culture. But that's about privation and a kind of a cultural distance from a place that 400 another country 400 miles away is making our laws. So there's a kind of existential, internally colonized mentality that makes that kind of hit thing seem such a vital part of your culture.
Thanks for that, Irvine. We must leave it there, but appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kay.
Thanks. Let's talk about dynamic pricing, should we? And as it relates to particularly Oasis tickets, but it's used in lots of other areas as well. What's going to happen? Morning.
Good morning. So dynamic pricing isn't being outlawed, but the idea is to try to make the whole process a bit fairer so that people know what the maximum price that they are going to be asked to pay is before they start that transaction process. So what's happening now is some people will queue up, often for many hours for concert tickets. And then by the time they get to the front of the queue, the ticket price will change. So what they were expecting is now much higher. And we saw it over the summer with Oasis tickets, also Taylor Swift tickets and others, where people ended up paying more than double what they initially thought. With Oasis, it went from £148 to £355. Now, that's a process known as dynamic pricing, where sellers can set different price points depending on all sorts of different factors, including demand. And we see it in the grocery stores. We see it in the airline industry, where all of the seats on a plane that is going to the same destination might be sort of various prices for those seats. There's nothing wrong with that. It can be healthy. It can be a good thing. But there is a concern that concert goers are being pressurised into paying over their expected price because they're under pressure. They've waited a long time for this, and then when the moment comes, they're at the front of the queue. They sort of need to make a split-second decision. So the government wants to change the law so that sellers need to specify what the maximum price is that you'll pay before you get into that queue, sort of doing the whole thing that we do now, but in a reverse order. And the idea is that it will make the process fairer, it will make the consumer experience more enjoyable. What happens at the concert when you get there, whether or not you enjoy it, that's a different matter. But certainly for the process of buying the tickets, that should become more fairer.
OK, for now, thank you. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News, your opportunity to tell the government how the NHS can be fixed. But will it make a difference? We'll speak to the National Medical Director of the NHS next.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
Free wherever you get your news.
I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C. Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm Katie Spencer, and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent.
I'm Lisa Dowd, and I'm one of Sky's Midlands correspondents. The reason I do this job is because you never know where it's going to lead.
Trust in politics is at an all-time low. What's going wrong and can we fix it? It's from Liz. She wants to know, why is there still no sign of the Labour Party electing a woman as leader?
It's sort of embarrassing. You know, it takes a very strong man to be leader, but it takes an even stronger man to support a woman for leader.
If you want to be mean to politicians, crack on. The activists that go out and make elections happen, I kind of feel like just don't be horrible to them. Be polite to them in the same way that they're polite to you.
Keir Starmer has got us into government with a big majority. He was completely clear before the election that he wasn't going to be able to do the two-child benefit policy, but I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't an early thing that comes along.
I went up to Gordon Brown and said, hello? No, yes, where is it? I said, found all these Tory candidates breaking land. Let me see it, let me see it. This is brilliant, brilliant.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. Greg Milam, Sky News, Manchester.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people. at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello again, everybody. Back to one of our top stories today, and the government is urging the public to share their own experiences of the health service to help fix the NHS. The National Medical Director of the NHS, Professor Sir Stephen Powis, is joining us now. Hello to you, Sir Stephen. Thanks for taking the time to join us. Your thoughts on what we're hearing from the government so far, and what we can expect between now and the spring, and the public's view on reforming the NHS?
Good morning. So as you know, as everybody knows, the NHS is facing huge challenges at the moment. We've got record demand. We've got increasing number of people with long-term illnesses who have complex needs. The population is aging. So it's important that we continue to innovate, continue to reform so that we can manage that demand. And we often know, as Lord Darcy said in his independent review, that patients and staff often have the solutions. So this listening exercise is to get those solutions, to hear what the best is, and then, as the Secretary of State often says, to ensure that the best is spread across the rest of the NHS.
It's all about money, though, isn't it, at the end of the day?
It's partly about money, and always will be, but it's also about reform. It's also about innovation. It's also about working more efficiently. So discussions will be going on, as they always do before a budget, as to the funding the NHS needs. But that can't be the only answer. It mustn't be the only answer. We need to ensure that we innovate, we use new technology, we take advantage of things such as artificial intelligence, and we continue to think differently. The NHS has done that since 1948. It needs to continue doing that, and never more so than now.
And in 2002 to 2011, we spent £12 billion on tech, and it failed.
Well, tech is always growing. We're always seeing new tech. There will always be a need to spend money on tech because, as we know in our daily lives, the things that tech can do, the advantages they can bring, the benefits are always going to increase. So we are really, really focused on rolling out tech to the NHS. The NHS app is a great example of that. Well over 30 million people have it. You can order repeat prescriptions, book appointments, things that you simply couldn't do 5 or 10 years ago. And of course, we want all health records to be in the NHS app, so you are the owner of your own health data. Really important shift.
Isn't it that most people have got that app because they felt that they needed it during COVID?
There's no doubt that COVID boosted the use of the app, but I think most people have the app now because it makes their lives easier. You don't have to phone up for a repeat prescription. You don't have to visit the surgery. You can do it on the app. You can see your appointments in many cases. And like me, many people can see their entire health records from their GPs. And increasingly, that will be the case from hospital records as well.
Do you buy into, Professor, the suggestion that if you hand out a load of smartwatches, it's going to make people healthier?
Well, what I do buy into is that wearable tech is another really important advancing technology. So we've already given out lots of blood pressure monitoring machines and wearables, and we know that people are recording their blood pressure and transmitting that information to their general practitioner. So I have no doubt that wearable tech, we've seen tech for diabetes that allows people to manage their diabetes better. There will be an explosion of technology in this area. Our job in the NHS is to evaluate it and where it has benefit to ensure we get it into the hands of the public.
You say it's not all about money, but the NHS has said that it will deliver, or the government has said it will deliver an extra 40,000 extra appointments. How much money will, a week I think, how much money will the NHS need in order to deliver that?
Well, we're working through, as I say, money in advance of the budget. It wouldn't be right for me to speculate what will be in the budget at the end of this month. But we are really focused on reducing waiting lists. We have managed to reduce the number of people waiting a year since last year. And I have no doubt that staff are really keen to get those waiting lists down. Nobody wants people to be waiting longer than they should. We've had this impact post-pandemic that is taking time to clear through, but we are really focused on it.
Yeah, millions and millions of people are waiting longer than they should. Money has increased by a significant amount for the National Health Service, and yet operations by surgeons and patients being seen by A&E doctors and nurses has fallen.
Yes, and demand is increasing all the time. So we're seeing more and more people, and of course those people have more complex health needs as the population ages. But it's also the case that we need to continuously be more efficient. So money is important, but we're very conscious that we need to use taxpayers' money wisely. So there's a real focus on productivity, on doing more for that money. And there are many places in the country that have now got, for instance, surgical facilities that have got very, very high throughputs. For instance, by separating acute care from elective care. It's a good way of ensuring that you use those facilities as efficiently as possible. We will continue to have a laser focus on efficiency.
I remember we've done surveys with the public before and ended up with things like Boaty McBoatface. How confident are you that you'll get something that's tangible?
Well, I'm really confident that patients and staff often have the solutions to problems. I visit many health organisations, whether it's in general practice or in hospitals, every week. And I'm always struck, as I was when I was working as a clinician, that staff and patients have ideas. They have great ideas. And our job is to capture them, to test them, and where they work, to ensure that we roll them out as quickly as possible. So I'm very confident that there will be a lot of great ideas coming out of this listening exercise.
Good to talk to you. Thank you, Professor. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Will, standing by for us, what we got? What's caught your eye, I should say, today? Wolf, good morning.
Well, a smile on my face. You reminded me of the scandal around Boaty McBoatface. A great British story, that, wasn't it? Well, top of the list, of course, will be the royal tour. I guess no surprise that the King and Queen have faced some level of Republican protest while they're in Australia. The surprise, of course, though, is where and when and who. Independent Senator Lidia Thorpe. So we'll be talking a bit more about that. We'll be diving a little bit deeper into this Moldovan referendum and, of course, importantly, also presidential election, all held at once, and the result on the referendum too close to call things stand. We'll be talking a little bit more about that and the significance of it. And then, of course, the big election, the big story of the next couple of weeks as well. We'll have a guest on that to discuss the US election. 2 weeks to go. Too close to call, and both the candidates out campaigning, as you've already been discussing throughout the weekend. We'll be looking ahead to that with 2 weeks left.
OK, lovely. Thank you. It's often the tale of a film or a fairy tale, but a message in a bottle thrown off Sunderland Pier by a 12-year-old girl in August last year has been picked up in Sweden. Grace Liddell said she was over the moon, when she learned her message had been received, fearing it had sunk in open waters. The glass bottle was filled with handwritten scrolls, including her name and contact details. 72-year-old Swede, Freddie Stalberg, found the bottle on his own treasure hunt, walking along the beach. Grace calling it a miracle and saying she hopes her next bottle will make it to the United States. As we learned in journalism school, only God can create miracles. Do you remember that?
Do remember.
There you go. A message in a bottle. Have you ever tried that?
I haven't tried that. And do I want to be that person?
Go on.
About polluting the oceans?
Oh, stop. It didn't. It got there.
Well, fortuitously.
What about
Should
you?
we be
Have you tried
encouraging
a
this?
message in a bottle?
I haven't. I feel it could take quite a long time to know whether you've succeeded or failed.
Yeah.
The record for the oldest, 132 years between it being sent and finally being picked up, and it had only gone 950 kilometres. Quite lackadaisical bottle.
Yeah, always when people say message in a bottle, it always reminds me of Sting and Police. No?
Remind me.
Oh, stop.
Come on, your musical knowledge, Mike. We've been here before. We've been doing this for months now.
Stop it. You've not heard Message in a Bottle?
No. Shall I go and do you want me to bear with me?
Okay.
We can't.
I can hit the noises of the gallery.
Oh, quite right too. Even our producer who's trying to count us off air is sighing at your lack of musical knowledge. That's it from us for now. We are back in just a few moments' time with all today's top stories, including the announcement by Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary. He wants to know what you think about the National Health Service and what you would do to reform it. Doesn't even know a police song, so I'm sure he's not going to ask your opinion.
Bear with me.
OK, we'll see you in a sec. Stay tuned.
The most significant day of
this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Hi everyone, a very good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock. Coming up, our top story, the dramatic moment that King Charles was yelled at by an Australian politician, calling him a genocidalist.
Plus, a plea for your views on the NHS. The government have told us they're aware that services need to be improved.
And the story of a message in a bottle which made its way from Sunderland to Sweden.
If you weren't with us in the last hour, you don't know why we're laughing. It's Monday, the 21st of October.
Give us what you stole from us! Our bones, our skulls, our babies, our people! You destroyed our land! Give us the treaty!
A senator
we want a treaty in
erupts
this
King
country.
Charles's speech in the Australian Parliament, yelling at him before being removed by security. Help fix our NHS. Starmer launches the biggest ever consultation on the health service, calling for patient experiences and ideas. Beirut's hit by a series of airstrikes after Israel threatened to target Hezbollah financial sites. Life inside Europe's drug death capital and the hope that consumption rooms can help reduce those deaths.
You don't know what's in that, and that could be your last hit.
To be honest, mate, that bless him.
And Stevie Wonder serenades Kamala Harris as she celebrates her 60th birthday on the campaign trail. 2 weeks to go. Hello everyone. King Charles has been interrupted in the Australian Parliament by a senator accusing him of genocide and shouting, "This is not your land and you are not my king." He'd just finished giving a speech when Senator Lidia Thorpe, who's known for Indigenous rights activism, approached where he was sat and began yelling before being removed by security. This is what happened. Correspondent Laura Bundock is following the King's tour, joins us now live from Canberra. This was supposed to be the keynote speech.
Yeah, it was one of those set-piece moments, a long-planned speech, the one opportunity the King had to speak to what was the great and the good of Australia, who'd gathered in the Great Hall of Parliament House to hear him speak. Remember, there was a lot of controversy when 6 of those state premiers had said they weren't going to come to Canberra to hear this speech because it was a big deal. Anyway, the speech, which went on for 11 minutes or so, was relatively well received. The King was taking his place back on the stage when Lidia Thorpe got up and was in the middle of the aisle shouting towards the King. Now, she couldn't get as far as the King. She was ushered backwards, but you can hear her angry, clearly shouting, "Not my King, not your country," at him before she was taken out of the hall. The King, looking slightly surprised, turns to his side and starts speaking to the Prime Minister quietly, Anthony Albanese. It was a difficult moment for him, without a doubt. And his speech, it started his speech talking about Indigenous Australians. That was one moment that happened. The second moment had happened earlier in the day. As soon as he landed in Canberra, he was given what's called a welcome to country and a smoking ceremony, a very traditional gesture given by Indigenous Australians to welcome dignitaries, VIPs and the like to the country. This took place, the King and the Queen receiving this, but it was the elder, Auntie Serena Williams, who'd given them this welcome, who later said to us that she wanted the King to apologise for what had happened during colonial times, that she said we all have roles and responsibilities and that there was a moment where the past needed to be acknowledged. So the King was wanting this day to be all about what he said inside Parliament, the military, the ceremony, the national monuments that Canberra is full of. It is, of course, the capital of Australia, but instead we are reminded that the pains of Australia's past when it comes to reconciliation, it is a difficult situation still for Australia. It is painful. Those scars of colonial times are still raw for many. And I think those people who'd wanted the King to apologise in his speech, those people who want more action, are not satisfied with the words they heard today.
OK, Finai, thank you. In the last hour, I spoke to the leader of Australia's National Party, David Littleproud, who was in the room at the time. He called it a publicity stunt.
She's a senator, and with that comes a great privilege and ability to go into our parliament and to be able to roam free. And she should, but she isn't treating that with the respect she should. And she's using that as a business model to try and garner attention. She obviously will be up for election at the next federal election. I doubt that she'll be there after it. And so her only way of trying to maintain any semblance of relevance is to continue to undertake these stunts. The King handled it well. I think the security forces handled it well. And our nation will move on knowing who Lidia Thorpe is. We'll simply look at it and just go, this is another stunt.
And at 9:45, speaking to the senator who interrupted the King, Lidia Thorpe. That'll be live here on The Breakfast Show, so do stay tuned for that. Probably have to have the delay on. Now, the Prime Minister is urging people to share their ideas and experiences of the NHS to help shape his government's 10-year plan to improve the health service. People can submit their ideas on the NHS website or app until the beginning of next year. Our political correspondent, Ali Fortescue, reports.
In a long-awaited budget, the NHS could be among the few winners. Cash, though, we're told, will come only with reform.
I think there is a big opportunity here for everybody, whether it's frontline staff, whether it's patients, whether it's the government, whether it's trust leaders, all to work together to bring about improved NHS services and wider public services.
And to see that improvement today, a consultation launched by the Prime Minister and the Health Secretary to shape a 10-year plan to overhaul the NHS.
There are two real political challenges here. The Prime Minister and Health Secretary need to find a way of bringing NHS staff and unions with them on the journey of reform. They also need to find a way of showing that there can be tangible results from what is a long-term plan in time for the next election.
It's helpful to have an extensive consultation exercise, but it shouldn't last too long. And what we want to see is the government using the expertise, the evidence that's available on what the long-term solutions are. And we certainly know what they are in relation to improving cancer outcomes in the United Kingdom. We need to prevent more cancers, diagnose them earlier, have more personalised treatment, and make sure that there's investment in the NHS workforce and ensuring that new treatments are brought in as quickly as possible.
Politics is about choices. The NHS, it seems, is a political priority. What that might mean for other public services will become clearer on Budget Day. Ali Fortescue, Sky News, Westminster.
Tamara's here to talk about that. First, let's bring in the Health Minister, Stephen Kinnock. He was with us in the last hour talking about productivity. Why didn't you ask junior doctors for a commitment to higher productivity when you said, there you go, 22% pay rise?
Well, look, I mean, I think it's absolutely built into the system that we've got to improve productivity. Every single junior doctor in the country knows that. They're totally committed to doing that. But those strikes were costing the country £1.7 billion a year. We've done more in the last 14 weeks than the Tories did in 14 years.
Yeah, but they didn't ask them for it. So it's ingrained in them. Junior doctors know that they need to work harder as a result.
Yeah, and I think the backdrop to all of this is that the general expectation in Westminster is that in the budget on the 30th, we don't know this officially yet, that the NHS will do all right, will get an above-average settlement in order to meet some of these enormous promises that were made during the election campaign, 40,000 new appointments, bringing waiting lists down when they're currently still going up, cancer, dental treatment, all of it needs a lot of investment. And Stephen Kinnock said that they accept the case for that. But they've had to settle this junior doctors dispute. About half of the NHS's budget goes on staff, and we know that there is a crisis with staff. One of the reasons why the government are starting this, what they call this national conversation about the NHS, is to get the views of the doctors and the patients and all the other people who are involved in delivering it to say, what do you think we should do? But the problem is there's no real numbers there. There are no deadlines. There are no amounts of money in there yet because that all has to be filled in by Rachel Reeves next week. And when we know the government has already cut back, for example, on the hospital building programme, saying we simply can't afford it, I think there are really big questions about what can be achieved, say, in the next year or 2 years, so that by the time of the next election, voters feel like we've seen an actual improvement.
Spending tech apparently is the way forward, but we've seen that with previous Labour governments.
Yes, the NHS IT programme was sort of notable disaster. Of course, tech has moved on an enormous amount since then. A lot of people have the NHS app, and one of the government's big ideas is that if we could all get our medical records on there, it could save over 1 million hours of NHS time, because it wouldn't just be your doctor who has them. Every time you go to a hospital or one of these new community care centres they want to open up, then you could just have it with you. You wouldn't have to be asked loads more of the same questions over and over again. But of course, there are questions about people's data and the companies who will be managing that data. People have been burnt by that in the past. And also, how long is this going to take to get up and running? I didn't hear Stephen Kinnock say this will all be up and running in a year's time. You know, we're going to undoubtedly have a difficult winter in the NHS this year, and it doesn't take long for the public's expectations to set. And if they want to keep the hope alive that things will improve, I think people will want to see milestones along the way.
OK, for now. Thank you. One wonders why they didn't introduce this the day after they came into power 100 and odd days ago. But hey, that's a question for the Minister. Forgot to ask him. What else?
Some of today's other news
Yeah.
for you. Now we're going to turn our attention to the Middle East because blasts have been heard across Lebanon's capital, Beirut, overnight after the Israeli military pledged to begin targeting Hezbollah's financial sites. Let's bring in our international correspondent, Alex Rossi, who's in Beirut and joins us now. Just bring us up to speed on the developments in the last few hours, Alex.
Well, it was a very busy night for the Israeli Defense Force last night, targeting what they say were financial institution affiliated to Hezbollah. We think there was at least 12 strikes, mainly in Hezbollah's stronghold in Dahir, which is just over there. You can still see some smoke on the horizon, on the skyline, from where those airstrikes were hit. Now, last night we heard loud explosions. We also saw flashes of orange and yellow as those bombs were dropped. Now, Israel says that it is continuing to trying to degrade Hezbollah. This institution, it says, was involved in financing the organisation, buying arms for it, and therefore it claims it was a legitimate target. Now, we've heard from this institution, Al-Qad al-Hassan, in a statement they called the decision to target it a sign of Israel's bankruptcy, and assured customers that it had taken measures to ensure their funds. Now, the evacuation orders that were put in place by the Israelis saw hundreds of people flee those areas. Remember, more than 1 million people have been displaced by the fighting so far. Now, this is clearly another escalation in this crisis. It had been hoped with the killing of Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, that there may be a path towards diplomacy, but it would appear that, if anything, the violence is intensifying.
Joining us live from Beirut, Alex, thank you so much. Around 1,500 homes and businesses in Northern Ireland remain without power this morning in the aftermath of Storm Ashley. Northern Ireland Electricity has been working to restore power to more than 10,000 customers since the storm first hit. Aircraft faced challenging conditions as they tried to land and take off, with winds reaching as high as 80 miles per hour. A section of the M25 has closed following a lorry fire. The carriageway likely to remain closed until at least midday, National Highways said, and drivers have been warned to avoid the area. The screening of a documentary about the singer Pharrell Williams in London was interrupted by animal rights activists last night. Let's take a listen. The campaign group Petty UK shouted and held up a banner referring to Louis Vuitton's use of animal fur in some of its collections. Williams became the creative director of the French fashion house last year. Donald Trump's been working at McDonald's, a food outlet in Pennsylvania. The Republican presidential candidate donned an apron to make fries great again. It comes after his Democratic rival Kamala Harris said that she'd worked at the fast food chain when she was in college, a claim Mr. Trump says is made up.
Well, I'm looking for a job, and I've always wanted to work at McDonald's, but I never did. I'm running against somebody that said she did, but it turned out to be a totally phony story. So if you don't mind, I want to work the French fry counter.
Absolutely.
Okay, how much are you paying me?
Meanwhile, the US Vice President Kamala Harris has been given a 60th birthday performance from Stevie Wonder. The Democratic nominee for president was out rallying at churches in Georgia when she was joined on stage by the legendary singer.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy
Absolute legend. Now, if you thought the UK's vote on the EU, if our case to leave it was tight, let me tell you about what's happening in Moldova right now. A referendum there on joining the EU hangs in the balance, with 50.2% saying yes, 49.8% saying no. Our Europe correspondent Siobhan Robbins is standing by for us. Cool, that's tight, isn't it?
Kay, what a nail-biting referendum this is. So just to explain to people what Moldovans have been voting on, essentially they began their journey towards the EU in 2022, but they were voting in this referendum to see whether they wanted the aim of joining the EU in the constitution. And polls ahead of this vote suggested that the majority would vote yes by more than 60%. And we were at the pro-Western President's HQ last night, and really at the beginning the mood was the feeling was a few hours after the polls closed she would come and do some sort of speech. Everyone was expecting her to be victorious. Very quickly the mood changed when it started to become obvious with those preliminary results that no was pulling ahead. And just after midnight, she came out, did a speech and said that basically democracy here was under attack. She didn't name who by. She said foreign powers and criminal groups were trying to undermine democracy with disinformation campaigns, bribing voters. But read between the lines, and there has been a clear focus and accusations that Moscow has been trying to interfere in this vote. We spoke to the police chief here over the weekend. He said running up to this election they faced bomb hoaxes, widespread disinformation, voter bribery. They'd uncovered a network, he claimed, of 130,000 people who had been bribed to vote no, connected to a fugitive tycoon who has close links to Moscow. That tycoon and Moscow have denied any interference. They say it's Russia-phobia, but clearly the government here doesn't agree. Now, the votes are still coming in. We've got all the votes, provisional votes from Moldova, and actually the country has voted more towards no. What we're counting now is Moldovans abroad, so the diaspora, and that overnight has sort of pulled it towards yes. Now, we are talking about a few thousand votes. The president has said she will react when it's all in because it's just too close to call. But what is very clear is this country is deeply divided, and whatever happens, the opposite side is going to find it extremely difficult to accept this vote.
OK, for now, thank you. We have a special report now on life inside Europe's death drug capital, which is Glasgow. A so-called safer drug consumption room was due to open there today, but it's been delayed. Here's our Scotland correspondent Conor Gillis, and a warning: his report contains footage of substance abuse.
What have you got on you today then?
Yeah, I've got some heroin.
It's 11 a.m. on the front line of Europe's drugs epidemic.
The needles are free, and that cost me £10. £10, you know what I mean? And that's 20 ml of heroin.
How quick can you get it?
For 10 minutes.
Chris is 41, a painter and decorator turned heroin addict. Homeless, surviving in a tent, wondering if his next hit will be the one that kills him.
I just don't need to get it in me.
Right,
you know
we'll let you get on.
Overwhelmed by his cravings, Chris is lured to this dark, damp, dangerous corner.
Do you ever think that you don't know what's in that and that could be your last hit?
To be honest, mate, that'd be a blessing. To the way my life is, you know. Dying seems like a better life.
Glasgow has the highest rate of drugs deaths in Europe, a shameful scourge Scotland has failed to shake off. And here are the daily pavement patrols known as the Rapid Response Squad, clearing up the dangerous aftermaths of back alleys turned heroin havens.
This is one of the spots where
Chris says he's been waiting 6 months for rehab, shoplifting to fund his addiction.
I'm spending £20 for one bag. I get 2 for 30. So you've got to buy 2 for 30.
And is that a day?
No, that's per hit. So you're having like 5 hits a day.
Could this be part of the solution? The so-called safe consumption unit preparing to open a mile down the road. This will be the UK's first dedicated place where addicts will be able to take their illegal substances under medical supervision without the fear of arrest by police. The idea is to drive everything off the streets and indoors. It's a pilot that's been years in the making.
Jade, just tell me what happened.
So basically I was attacked, drugged, raped and dumped in a derelict car park. So
This is Vicky. We're protecting her identity as she gets clean after being hooked on heroin and crack, left for dead in 2019.
I had been dumped and thrown out of a moving car and I rolled over kind of onto my arm and I cut off into circulation. I was born into drugs. My mum actually gave me my first crack pipe at 14.
For the consumption units, I agree with it.
58-year-old Ricky has depended on drugs his whole life. He knows all too well how difficult the war on drugs is.
Well, most of the people I grew up with are dead and have died with drugs. I hope it does make a difference because it will save people's lives.
This is a city desperate for solutions, with daily deaths ravaging those who are always on the edge of society. Conor Gillis, Sky News.
Well, in the last hour, I spoke to Irvin Welsh, the author of Train Spotting. He told me that decriminalisation should not be ruled out to help the people who are turning to drugs.
Everybody, particularly young people, have got the need for compelling drama, and they're not getting it anywhere else. They're not getting it through the world of work. They're not getting that kind of drama, that interface. So they're getting it with each other in terms of scoring, in terms of conflict, in terms of trying to find a hierarchy in the gangs that are issuing and dealing with all these drugs. So I think these are the issues that need to be addressed. And if you can decriminalise it, if you can take it away from this kind of sort of whole underground culture, then perhaps maybe it's a stage.
The complaining cow is with me. I'd love to know how you got that name.
Well, it was when I started my blog about 12, 13 years ago, and I just put on Facebook, what's a good name for it? And a couple of friends came up with a couple of names, put it out to vote, and it was the complaining cow. So I didn't come up with it.
Helen Dewdney as well is her other name, of course. We're talking about dynamic pricing today. Potentially looking at it again, given what happened with Oasis in the summer. What are your thoughts?
Well, hopefully, if this bill goes forward, it should help consumers because the bill's proposing for them to be a maximum price. So when you're in that queue for hours waiting, and then you suddenly see the price has gone up a few £100, that should stop. So although they're not proposing to actually stop dynamic pricing, they're trying to improve the transparency. So it might say, this is the maximum price that you will pay. So you might start at £100, but it will never go more than, 300 or whatever. So it's probably going to be a percentage.
Why is it fair? I mean, if it's a ticket price, it's a ticket price,
yes,
surely.
And I think generally people feel that. But on some occasions, it helps. You think of when you look at holidays and flights, sometimes you can get them sort of cheaper because they're not popular. So it's sort of like...
You still have the price on the ticket, don't you?
Yes, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens because it will be debated, but it does seem to have support from across all parties.
But so you don't think there will actually be an end to dynamic pricing?
No, they're not proposing that at this stage. They're not proposing that at all.
Do you think that people who paid significantly over the odds for Oasis tickets are in a position where they potentially could get some of their money back?
Well, at the moment, the Competition Markets Authority are investigating to see if any consumer law has been broken. So the Consumer Protection from Unfair Trading Regulation, so you shouldn't mislead. So they are investigating. They had a consultation between the 6th and 19th of September, so that's just closed recently. So they are looking. Now, if they see that there have been breaches, then it could well be that people will get their money back. But it's a wait and see, I think, at the moment.
Because the promoters, of course, at Oasis and the owners of Ticketmaster are one and the same.
Absolutely. They blame each other, but when you look at it, it's quite a twisted ownership of all the different organisations, yeah.
How long has dynamic pricing been around for? And who tends to use it?
Well, I think we see it a lot in holidays. We see that a lot in travel. We see that with those flights, and you see it with hotels, because we saw it not only with the Oasis tickets, we saw the hotels also putting their prices right up when those dates were announced. So it's been around for quite a while.
School holidays too, of course.
Absolutely.
Okay. What can we do to protect ourselves against it?
I'm not sure that we can, and that's why we saw the problems that we have. And I think it's when it comes to dynamic pricing on holidays and things, it's to go for those unpopular dates. But if you're a family and you want to go in the school holidays, you're not going to get around it. But...
No. And what about top tips for if you are hoping for hanging on the line quite literally, as Debbie Harry would say, in order to get those tickets? Have you got any tips on how you can potentially buffer yourself against those astronomical prices?
I think it's very difficult because you don't know what's coming. Like the Oasis fans didn't know what was coming, but I think at the moment, before there are any changes, is to have a figure in mind. So people felt under pressure. So when they had been in the queue for, £100 ticket, say, and then they got to 500, they I've been waiting for 5 hours. That's, I'm going to have to pay that. So at the moment, I think it's just a case of making sure that you've got a figure in your head that you will not pay more than, and so that it's easier when it comes to that, you see that higher price, that is the price I said I would not pay, and then don't do it, keeping it in your mindset.
OK, it's good to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News. We're going to be speaking to Jack and Sam about what to expect from the Chancellor's first budget. Apparently not long to wait now. That's what the politicians keep telling us. And far from a king's welcome, Charles is accused of genocide. While speaking at Parliament House in Canberra, we crossed to Australia. And the remarkable moment a message in a bottle was pulled ashore over 1,000 miles away.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Do you fear a fourth indictment? Does your government owe an apology to the British home children?
Great to see you.
Does your government owe them an apology? The fact that they were intercepted, does that indicate a military weakness on the part of Iran?
No, no, no.
Free, wherever you get your news. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. You can feel a devastating power. It had been a difficult night in a deadly storm.
Bang, bang. You can hear it hitting the windows.
Our houses are okay.
It's depressing. As bad as all of this is, it could have been much worse. Today, this land they call sacred is at the heart of America's electric car revolution.
To me, it's a sacred ground.
The white gold rush is a race that Biden doesn't want to lose. I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world. Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States, it would appear is about to learn his fate.
Escort coming out!
San Quentin houses America's largest death row. They rarely allow cameras onto the condemned block.
James Matthews, Sky News. I want to be treated equally like everyone else. It's one step closer to getting out, to getting off death row.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
You're diminished by claims that you're a racist.
Question?
Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding. What do you call him, sir?
He's from Sky News. He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Coming up, we take a look at the week ahead in politics with Jack and Sam. Well, Jack and Sam, yeah, he's somewhere. We'll find him. Plus, we'll speak to Aussie royal commentator Angela Mollard after the King was heckled, more than heckled. He's called a genocidalist. We'll be talking to the lady who claimed that that's what he is in the next hour as well.
And one of our top stories this morning for you is that a senator has interrupted King Charles's speech in the Australian Parliament, yelling at him, as Kay was saying, describing him as a genocidalist before being removed by security.
Give us our land back! Give us what you stole from us! Our bones, our skulls, our babies, our people! You destroyed our land!
The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has launched the biggest ever consultation on the health service, calling for patient experiences and ideas. Beirut has been rocked by at least 10 explosions overnight as Israel's campaign against Hezbollah continues to escalate. And a referendum in Moldova on joining the EU is neck and neck. Latest results put the yes vote at 50.2% and the no at 49.8%.
Jack and Sam, well, Jack at the moment, but maybe you should have a podcast on your own.
Do you know what? I've thought that for a while now. Should we just ease him out the door and I can just sit and talk into a microphone?
What have you been talking about, the budget?
Hours. Yeah, everyone's talking about the budget in Westminster. It's really the only topic in town. It's 9 days away now, a week on Wednesday, and it's really the big political moment of the autumn. We know the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is planning big tax rises to try and fill this, what she says is a black hole in the budget. But today, the government's really keen to talk about the NHS. We think that the one part of government that is going to get a real cash injection in this budget, while everyone else is tightening their belts, is the National Health Service. And the government's keen to turn it into a more positive story than we've heard so far. And so we have Keir Starmer out today talking about the NHS. We're expecting Rachel Reeves to announce positive news for the NHS next week. And the idea is just to shift the mood music a little bit now, away from the doom and gloom and onto something where voters might feel they actually get some tangible results out of this budget and not just see taxes go up left, right and centre.
Now, we heard tech is what Stephen Kinnock wanted to talk to us about. I pointed out to him that 20-odd years ago, Tony Blair told us about tech being the future, and £12 billion later, it failed.
Yeah, the health service, and indeed all of government, does not have a great track record at implementing these kinds of things. But equally, they can't avoid it. You know, we all know how transformative technology is and will continue to be. It would be crazy not to put technology at the heart of the health service. And the question is, how quickly can the government go? How realistically can they deliver the sorts of transformative change they say? And also, how much do patients want it? You know, how much time do you want to spend talking to a doctor on your phone or via an app or whatever, versus the face-to-face that people certainly used to be used to before things got really hard?
How would you describe a working person?
Someone that goes to work, surely.
Yeah. What do you think?
Are journalists working people? We sort of sit around and chat, don't we? I don't know. We're sort of on the borderline, but it's an important question for this
is what the
budget.
Minister said this morning.
Yeah, well...
It's absolutely clear in our manifesto.
It's not clear to me, that's why I'm asking you the question.
Yeah, but obviously the definitions have to be seen in the round, and that's what's going to be put on the table.
You're either working or you're not. I mean, if you weren't earning more than 6 figures and you're paying a lot of tax, then you're still a working person, surely. I was just confused about what he meant.
It just would not be appropriate for me to speculate on what the Chancellor's going to put
I'm not asking you about what the Chancellor's putting in the budget. I'm asking your opinion. If you earn more than £100,000, are you still a working person?
The Chancellor's going to set all of this out on the 30th of October.
Why are you laughing?
Oh, because that was really awkward, wasn't it? Stephen Kinnock just didn't want to give you an answer, which is difficult for the government. It's a smart line of questioning because the government has made this thing about working people, not raising taxes on working people. That's been their slogan for months now, before the election and since the election. But as you say, they've never really defined what it is they actually mean by that. It's just a sort of vibesy thing about people who are sort of... I heard someone describe it as lower and middle class, but what does that even mean?
I don't know.
These days.
I don't know. Why have they boxed themselves into a corner in this way?
Because they're trying to give the message that most normal people won't be hit by these tax rises and that it'll more be businesses and richer people. They want to give that impression without nailing down what they actually mean.
So does that mean you're abnormal if you earn more than £100,000?
Well, quite literally you are. I mean, most people don't earn that sort of money, so you're not in the sort of normal middle bit of where people earn. So from that point of view, yes, I guess that's true. And I think the government is clear that it will be businesses and wealthier people who'll bear the brunt of this, and they think that's fair. It's the kind of thing you'd expect from a Labour government. But they don't want to be nailed down on the specifics. And you've seen so many headlines about tax rises over the past few weeks now. It feels like almost every tax is being explored as a possibility. I think when Rachel Reeves actually announces her package a week on Wednesday, it'll only be some of those things, and she'll actually try and take some credit for not raising certain taxes as well, things that we've been reading about in the papers. Maybe this will go up, maybe that'll go up. When she says, actually, I'm freezing fuel duty, for example, that's a huge success suddenly, when actually she hasn't done anything at all.
Bet she's not going to do that, but okay.
You mentioned the papers. You just go every day, there's another, here's the who's who of what taxes may or may not be in the likelihoods. It's endless. Thank goodness it's 10 days away. Talk to us about PMQs, Angela Rayner.
PMQs on Wednesday should be an interesting one because Keir Starmer is, for his sins, travelling to the South Pacific this week. Can't be bad, can it? So while we're here in this sort of October gloom, he'll be in a hula skirt in Samoa.
Do you think he'll do the dancing thing?
Really
I've got some lessons from Theresa May.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, well, it works so well for Theresa May, so why not? He'll be down there for the Commonwealth Heads of Government Summit, which happens every 2 years. And it leaves, obviously, a space at the top of government. And Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, will be at PMQs on Wednesday. And that is always something of a spectacle. Angela Rayner, not a sort of one of the quieter members of the Cabinet, shall we say. She's got character, and so that will be quite entertaining. And obviously, there'll be lots of questions. You know, she's been in the news for all sorts of reasons over the last few months, so there'll be lots of questions about that, I'm sure.
And what else have you talked about on your daily podcast this morning?
On our daily podcast this morning, another big moment coming up this week is on Tuesday, tomorrow, when we're getting another tranche of early release of prisoners under the government's early release scheme. This is something the government says it doesn't want to do, but it has been bequeathed by the Conservatives prisons that are so full that there really isn't any room for any more people to go into them, and so they're having to release people earlier than they had anticipated. We saw a big tranche of releases a few weeks ago, and you might remember the extraordinary footage of people coming out of prison and popping champagne corks out in the street and celebrating with their pals. Obviously, appalling footage. From the government's point of view, we may see something more like that tomorrow. I don't know if it'll be quite as visual, but certainly there'll be lots more letting out. And we're expecting the government to try and announce some sort of review of sentencing or something like that on Tuesday, just to try and get ahead of the story and show that they're not just letting out, you know, criminals willy-nilly and that's their only policy.
And we'll know who the new Tory leader is by next week?
Oh, as if, Kay. No, that's not quite. This contest goes on and on and on. It'll be the Saturday after the budget, so that's almost 2 weeks' time. We find out whether it's Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick who is the next leader of the opposition. I can see you're excited already. You can't wait, can you?
Seriously, why has it taken so long? And why have they not got somebody in place ahead of the budget?
Well, there are lots of Tory MPs asking that question. We'll have the slightly strange spectacle of Rishi Sunak, still the leader of the opposition, standing up and responding to the budget for the Conservatives 3 days before he leaves the job, and some people think he might walk out of Parliament and never be seen again. I mean, he's not said that, but he'll certainly be stepping down. So it does seem rather strange that they've set it up in this way. The other problem for the new Conservative leader, whoever it is, of that final two, is they'll get about 2 days of publicity. This is the one moment as the leader of the opposition when everyone's actually interested in you. And then we have the American election, and everyone will be talking about is Donald Trump, and did he win, and did he not, and how close was it? And whoever won the Conservative leadership contest will just be swept away, and we won't hear about them for weeks, I should think.
How's it going with the 4 or 5 days a week?
The podcast, it's a treat. There is no better way to start the day than getting up at 5:30 in the morning, drinking lots of strong coffee, and then chatting to Sam Coates on a Zoom call for half an hour. Who wouldn't?
Is there a vocal warm-up situation that goes on before?
The sort of moaning and groaning.
That's sad. But what about you?
No, I'm afraid not nearly professional for that. They're just frantically reading the papers, texting people about what's coming up today, trying to talk to 1 or 2 people in the government.
You're always ahead of the curve, you guys.
Mm-hmm. Well, the idea is that it tees people up for the day ahead, and try and keep it short and try and get it into your head on your way into work or when you're getting ready in the morning, so that people who are really into politics have just got that teed up for the day. What we don't want to be is those middle-aged blokes who waffle on forever and ever on podcasts, which I've heard there are a few political podcasts out there.
Ridiculous, don't be ridiculous. You'll be going on tour before too long. Final thought on, as you pointed out to me this morning, Yvette Cooper and the Mayor, Sadiq Khan, didn't realise how much their tickets were worth.
Well, isn't that amazing?
Stunned, I'll tell you. Stunned,
I know.
The rest of the population knew Taylor Swift tickets were not that cheap.
Yeah, who could have guessed that fancy tickets to see Taylor Swift were actually quite expensive? Yeah, I know. And I think there is a suspicion within Parliament that there's quite a lot of this that goes on. The MPs have to register their gifts, and it's not just these Labour ministers. It's been going on forever. And there is a suspicion that some MPs like to sort of play down how expensive some of the hospitality they received was actually worth, because it looks better for them. No one's ever been able to prove that, but people certainly suggest that it goes on.
Well, I could have told you it was more than £179.
Well,
I could have sworn there was an expenses scandal once upon a time. I could have sworn we've been over this before.
Yeah, not a good look.
No.
Not a good look.
Moving on. We'll see you next week. Scan the QR code on your screen right now. There it is. Bigger version for you there as well, with their sleeves rolled up, meaning business. And for the daily podcast from Jack and Sam. Thank you. Still to come on The Breakfast Show, we cross back to Australia, where King Charles has been accused of genocide by a senator at an event in Canberra.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. Free wherever you get your news.
I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C. Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm Katie Spencer, and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent.
I'm Lisa Dowd, and I'm one of Sky's Midlands correspondents. The reason I do this job is because you never know where it's going to lead.
Trust in politics is at an all-time low. What's going wrong, and can we fix it? It's from Liz. She wants to know, why is there still no sign of the Labour Party electing a woman as leader?
It's sort of embarrassing. You know, it takes a very strong man to be leader, but it takes an even stronger man to support a woman for leader.
If you want to be mean to politicians, like, crack on. The activists that go out and make elections happen, I kind of feel like just don't be horrible to them. Be polite to them in the same way that they're polite to you.
Keir Starmer has got us into government with a big majority. He was completely clear before the election that he wasn't going to be able to do the two-child benefit policy, but I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't an early thing that comes along.
I went up to Gordon Brown and said, hello? No, yes, where is it? I said, found all these Tory candidates breaking land. Let me see it. This is brilliant.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. Greg Milam, Sky News, Manchester.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Hello again, everybody. Been a dramatic day on King Charles's royal tour in Australia, with a senator interrupting the King's speech in Parliament House to accuse him of genocide, shouting, "This is not your land, you are not my king." Take a listen. Australian journalist and royal commentator Angela Mollard is with us now. Hello to you, Angela. This lady, we'll be speaking to her in the next hour, does have previous for being very upset with the monarchy. How do you think it will be received, what happened today?
Well, I was speaking to people in my local shopping centre this afternoon, and they thought it was disgraceful, very disappointed. Look, we do have ongoing conversations about becoming a republic here, but the fact is that the King had recognised the difficulty in our history in his speech, and I think that's what's disappointed people, that he has paid attention to some of the ongoing grievances here, and this is a conversation that is very important in Australia at the moment and has been for many decades, but it was not considered to be the time and the place to make that statement.
Several senior politicians, though it's not just her, several senior politicians had decided that they did not want to meet the King during his short visit to Australia. Is he just not popular anymore?
Look, he's still popular, but we have Labor politicians. They're generally heads of states and territories. They are generally Republicans. They all claim they had other things on, and that was seen as by members of the public here is fairly rude and disrespectful. But it's really interesting because the political element in the country is perhaps ambivalent towards the King and his visit, but the people on the ground are actually really excited about it. And this is quite unusual, Kay, because of course, when the late Queen Elizabeth died, we fully expected that Australia would move very quickly towards a republic. That, of course, has not happened. In fact, in July, the ministry tasked with proceeding with the republic was disbanded because there's so little interest.
How has Australia's relationship with the monarchy changed over the years?
Look, in the past, of course, there was we had tremendous respect, pride. We felt that we were part of England and that we were sort of we're down at the bottom of the world. Now we have a greater sense of independence, but there's still that interest, and that interest is more. I think the late Queen was quite unknowable, whereas Charles, Kate, William, we feel that we know them better because they speak more to us. There's a 24/7 news service. They have their own Instagram accounts. And I think there's that fact and that knowledge that they've talked about their flaws. They've talked about their frailties, their vulnerabilities. And that very much connects with the Australian public, where we say it how it is. It's the no worries, mate culture. And, as the King referred to us today, we are battlers. So to have a King and the Princess of Wales both struggling with cancer, that's very relatable for people in Australia.
OK, what else is planned for? It's almost finished now, isn't it, this tour?
One more day tomorrow, and actually that is going to be the pick of the occasions because the King is meeting with Professor Richard Scolyer, who has done extraordinary work with melanoma research, and he has terminal brain cancer himself. So as we know, the King has always been interested in community, culture, Commonwealth. He's now adding cancer to his repertoire of interests. So that will be the pick of the engagements, I think, for the King.
I seem to remember, back in the early 90s when the King, then Prince of Wales, was on stage. Somebody wanted to wave a gun in his direction. I remember his security guard being so cool about it, and the Prince of Wales just playing with his cufflinks until the situation was resolved. How did that compare to today?
Look, this is really interesting because 30 years ago exactly, he was here, he was standing at Darling Harbour. Here we see him, there's a vision. He sort of looks at it a little bit, as you say, perturbed. What's different and what was very interesting about the response to the Lidia Thorpe outburst today is that both the Queen and the King turned to our Prime Minister and his fiancée and engaged them in conversation in a way where they were smiling, they were relaxed. And I think this is how things have moved on. They're obviously very practiced. And this is the interesting thing about having a mature monarch, is that they've seen everything, they've been through everything, and they manage those unexpected events with great ease and calm.
Yeah, shout out to the security guard as well. He was his close protection officer was amazing. But given the reaction that we saw from them, they were, some might say, expecting some sort of disturbance.
Oh, look, I think they're primed for this. They know that it's going to happen. There are protests happening here during the visit. There was one yesterday. There's been them during the events in Canberra today. I think they're very aware that there is mixed feeling here towards them, but that they seemed very cool about it today. And compared with interviews that the King gave in 1994, where he was quite agitated, of course, different things were going on in his life back in 1994, but they seem a lot more relaxed and happy this time around.
Yeah, quite a lot different going on back in 1994.
Give or take cancer, obviously.
It's good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Hundreds of people have gathered at a memorial for Liam Payne in London. One Direction fans left handwritten notes and balloons at the Peter Pan statue in Hyde Park. The 31-year-old was found dead in Argentina on Wednesday after falling from the balcony of his hotel room. Alice Porter reports.
For the generation who grew up with Liam Payne, it was a moment to come together in grief and a chance to celebrate One Direction's music. Hundreds of young women and teenage girls gathered in Kensington Gardens many were completely bereft. A minute's silence was held to remember Liam Payne, who died aged 31 after falling from a balcony in Argentina.
We will all grow up with One Direction and Liam himself. One Directioners, Liam Payne supporters, it doesn't matter who we are, where you come from, it's the love we all share for the person.
It's like not knowing the person personally, but I think it was when like YouTube blew up, and so it was the first time that you were ever able to follow someone's life so intimately.
Been crying at work all day, every day. Yesterday was the only day I didn't cry because I just felt numb. I couldn't cry anymore.
Directioners, the name given to One Direction fans, also came together for vigils in Birmingham, as well as Manchester and Glasgow.
Only getting older, baby.
But similar gatherings were held around the world, including New York, demonstrating how One Direction's music has resonated with young fans internationally. Liam's father was in Argentina for the heartbreaking task of organising the repatriation of his son's body. Details of when the funeral will be have not yet been revealed. Liam's music was clearly the story of so many lives, and One Direction was the soundtrack for a generation. Alice Porter, Sky News.
Those poor parents, can't even begin to imagine. Hi, talk to me about dynamic pricing and what's going to happen.
So the government is considering a law change to make things fairer for people who are waiting to buy tickets. Essentially, what is happening right now is that people log on to a website to buy tickets. They might be waiting for several hours before they come to the front of the queue. And then the price they were expecting to pay has suddenly gone up. That doesn't happen in all cases, but if we look at how much ticket prices are around different concerts, for Bruce Springsteen, some people paid £120. That was to stand at the back of the arena. For Billie Eilish, it was £145. Again, that's for standing tickets. And for Taylor Swift, we know that some people thought they were going to pay £172, but when they got to the front of the queue, they were being offered tickets for £300. That just gives you an idea of just how expensive it is to go to concerts. And in all of that, something called dynamic pricing is a strategy that sellers use is happening. And that means you might join the queue at an expected price, and then by the time you get to the front of the queue, that has sometimes more than doubled, as we saw in the case of Oasis tickets, which went from £148 to £355. Dynamic pricing is legal and lots of industries use it. The airline industry, grocery stores also use it. But the problem is buyers for concerts sometimes just don't know what they're going to end up paying, and they might have to be forced into sort of like a split-second decision when the time comes. So the government wants to change that to make it fairer, which means that sellers will need to specify what the maximum amount someone might pay is at the start of that purchase process.
OK, for now, thanks very much indeed. Now, it's often the tale of cinema or fairy tale, but a message in a bottle thrown off Sunderland Pier by a 12-year-old girl in August last year has been picked up in Sweden. Grace Little said she was over the moon when she learned her message had been received, fearing it's sunk in open waters. The glass bottle was filled with handwritten scrolls, including her name and contact details. 72-year-old Swede Freddie Stalberg found the bottle on his own treasure hunt walking along the beach. Grace calling it a miracle. A miracle, she says.
Absolute miracle.
And she hopes her next bottle will make it to the United States.
I want to know what she wrote in it, apart from obviously her name and address and contact details. But what was the message?
I don't know.
What was the message, Kay?
I don't know.
Also,
I don't know. I mean, the likelihood of it ever getting to... You were worried about ocean pollution. Well, it got there.
Well, it did get there.
So
but
it's absolutely fine.
it is absolutely fine, but I'm still worried about... I don't think this should be a trend that we should be encouraging.
I think it's very different trying to get it across the Atlantic as opposed to trying to get it over the North Sea.
Yeah, the North Sea doesn't seem much of a challenge either. In some respects, the part of me now says she should go for a bigger challenge and try and send it to America. It's like, I can't be helped, can I? I also have had a lot of grief from people who watched the previous hour about the fact that I did not know Message in a Bottle
by police.
By police. I've had a lot of messages. I'm not joking. And I've listened to it since, and I'm not a massive fan.
You're just doubling down now, aren't you? That's absolutely ludicrous. You were also asking Jack, because Sam, don't know where Sam was, about Angela Rayner. Wednesday, PMQs.
Yes, Wednesday PMQs. That will be fun to see how kind of that dynamic goes. It's always so, PMQs, I always remember American president calling in politicians in the US to watch PMQs because they think it's such a spectacle. And I always love that change of dynamics when it's not the, the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, but you've got the deputies there in their place.
Yes.
And there'll be some sparks flying, I'm sure. I'm sure more questions about what equates to a working class person as well.
Yeah. Let's not go there again, but let's celebrate and say many happy returns to Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
I have to say, he is an absolute legend. If you've not heard Songs in the Key of Life, you probably haven't, because we'll tell you more about that coming up in just a second.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Morning, everybody. It is 9 o'clock. Coming up, our top story, the dramatic moment that King Charles was yelled at by an Australian politician, calling him a genocidalist. We'll speak to her.
Plus, a plea for your views on the NHS. We'll speak to the head of the Patients Association.
And the story of a message in a bottle which made its way from Sunderland to Sweden.
It is Monday, the 21st of October.
Give us what you stole from us! Our bones, our skulls, our babies, our people! You destroyed our land!
A senator interrupts King Charles's speech in the Australian Parliament, yelling at him before being removed by security. Help fix our NHS. Starmer launches the biggest ever consultation on the health service, calling for patient experiences and ideas. Beirut is hit by a series of airstrikes after Israel threatened to target Hezbollah financial sites. Life inside Europe's drug death capital, and the hope that consumption rooms can help reduce deaths.
You don't know what's in that, and that could be your last hit.
To be honest, mate, that's a bad blessing.
And Stevie Wonder serenades Kamala Harris as she celebrates her 60th birthday on the campaign trail. Morning, everyone. King Charles has been interrupted in the Australian Parliament by a senator accusing him of genocide and shouting, "This is not your land. You are not my king." He just finished giving a speech when Senator Lidia Thorpe, who's known for Indigenous rights activism, approached where he was sat and began yelling before being removed by security. This is what happened. Well, in the last hour, I spoke to the leader of Australia's National Party, that's David Littleproud, who was in the room at the time. He called it a publicity stunt.
She's a senator, and with that comes a great privilege and ability to go into our parliament and to be able to roam free. And she should, but she isn't treating that with the respect she should. And she's using that as a business model to try and garner attention. She obviously will be up for election at the next federal election. I doubt that she'll be there after it. And so her only way of trying to maintain any semblance of relevance is to continue to undertake these stunts. The King handled it well. I think the security forces handled it well, and our nation will move on knowing who Lidia Thorpe is. We'll simply look at it and just go, this is another stunt.
Laura Bondock is standing by for us in Canberra this afternoon, where she is. Hi, Laura. He seemed to deal with it in his stride, the King and the Queen.
Yeah, look, shortly after it happened, he was sort of sat on the stage. They were all on this big stage at the front. Camilla was next to him as well. So they turned to the people they were sat next to and sort of started up conversations, the King talking to the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. But it was a really difficult moment for him. He just delivered this huge speech. We were told this was the moment in Canberra, this long kind of planned set-piece speech, a real keynote moment for him. Delivered the speech, sat down, and then Lidia Thorpe jumps up and makes her way in the aisle between the rows of people who were there to hear the King's speech, shouting at him really loudly. She was wearing traditional clothing. Now, so you know, she is a senator, so remember the upper house in Parliament here. She was the state of Victoria's first female Indigenous senator, and she is well known for these sorts of stunts, if you like, well known for being outspoken on Indigenous rights, and she certainly took her moment today, didn't she? So this happened, that the King carried on, and the rest of the reception carried on afterwards, but I think it certainly was a wobbly moment for him. Earlier, as he'd landed in Canberra, there was a second moment. He was given what's called a welcome to country. It's a traditional Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander welcome to visiting dignitaries, a smoking ceremony too. And the Indigenous elder who performed that on the King told us later on that she wanted him to say sorry for the wrongs of the colonial past, that he had a role and a responsibility, that he needed to acknowledge what had happened in the past. I said to her, look, he's got this opportunity to make a big speech. Would you like to hear him say sorry then? And she said yes. Now, the King very early on in that speech spoke about Indigenous Australians, but did not go as far as an apology. And I think what today shows, with it what happened in Parliament, I think, was it was uncomfortable. It was really confronting for the King. I don't think he'd have been expecting that at all. But for all of us, it was a reminder that reconciliation is difficult. It's divisive. And when you're talking about Australia's history, then it is still haunted by what went on in its past.
As far as a news event is concerned, it did look as though the security were well across what happened and dealt with it quickly.
Yeah, they did. You could see them sort of approaching the woman. It's one of those difficult situations. They don't want to knock her to the ground and make an even bigger scene, inflame the situation further. But, I mean, the King is surrounded by security at all times, particularly on these trips. And don't forget, you've got Australian security as well as the British security he brings with him. So they were gently, I would say, ushering her out, but gently insofar as not letting her get anywhere near the King. So she wasn't able to approach him on the stage. She was then taken out of the building. You could see her shouting as she was taken away. But I mean, that's what the security are there for. They did their job. She had her moment. She said what she wanted to say. Look, there are those who say she always does this kind of thing. She would have taken this moment to say this. But I think it does point to a bigger issue. A lot of people have been talking about republicanism framed around the future of the monarchy. But I think you have to look at the history of Australia and the First Nation people who've been here so much longer to properly understand the pain of its past.
OK, for now, thank you. 9:45, speaking to the senator who interrupted the King, Lidia Thorpe. She'll be joining us live here on the programme. And at 10 o'clock, the Prime Minister and the Health Secretary will be launching a national conversation on plans to build the NHS, rebuild the NHS. The Prime Minister is urging people to share their ideas and experiences of the health service on the NHS website or app until the beginning of next year. Earlier on the programme, I spoke to the Care Minister, and that's Stephen Kinnock.
We've had 14 years of Tory neglect and
This was when you guys were in charge.
Yeah, well, we, of course,
and you had 9 years at it, and it didn't work.
Well, when Labour left office in 2010, the patient satisfaction levels were the highest since the creation of the NHS
on this
in 1948.
It didn't work.
And in the last 14 years, the Tories have squandered the golden legacy that we handed to them. So we're going to give it our best shot right now. We're going to fix it because I think the sense of urgency across the country is greater than it's ever been.
You didn't do it last time.
Well, the sense of the depth of the crisis that we're facing is it's the worst we've seen, and I think people have got that sense that we've got to fix this now.
Tamara's here. So we were actually talking there about 20-odd years ago when Labour spent up to £12 billion on a tech system that failed, and then when the Tories came in, they scrapped it in 2011, I think. So the point I was making to him was you can spend as much as you want on tech, it doesn't necessarily work.
That's right, and I think that's one of the key questions about this national conversation that Keir Starmer and Wes Streeting are going to be announcing today. This is all framed as how to rescue, how to save the NHS, which the government say is broken and needs major surgery. The things that they're interested in doing are more care in the community, so not just going to see your GP, but being able to see other services as well without going to hospital, being able to monitor conditions at home with things like smart watches to check your blood pressure and so on, and also more use of technology. For example, the NHS app, which a lot of people downloaded during the pandemic, could be used, the government say, to have your health records with you. So it's not just your GP who has them, but every time you encounter a hospital or another bit of the NHS, you can avoid spending loads of time answering the same questions, and they reckon that could save 1 million hours of time. Now, this is all going to take months to consult with doctors, other NHS staff and patients. And of course, it's important that the people who actually use and work in the NHS get their say, because one of the problems with that NHS computer was that a lot of doctors didn't have much faith in it. But that takes us to spring, and this government did come in saying the NHS is broken, we're going to fix it, and we've already got potentially a very difficult winter this year. It will be spring before we hear what the plan is. And then there's no real timescales about how they implement this plan, let alone all the things they promised in the election, like 40,000 more appointments a week. So I think, of course, a lot hinges on what Rachel Reeves announced in the budget next week. NHS leaders are clear that they need a well above average settlement, so they're not just running to stand still. But we could be a couple of years into this government, and the fear is how much is going to be achieved in that timescale.
We were hearing from the head of NHS England and seeing what he wanted to see.
The NHS is facing huge challenges at the moment. We've got record demand. We've got increasing number of people with long-term illnesses who have complex needs. The population is aging. So it's important that we continue to innovate, continue to reform so that we can manage that demand. And we often know, as Lord Darcy said in his independent review, that patients and staff often have the solutions.
I think leaders like Stephen Powis are lobbying for more money for the NHS. From everything I hear in Westminster is, out of all the government departments, the NHS will do quite well out of next week's budget. The government understand that all these problems do require investment, but the NHS typically gets about a 3% increase in funding every year, and NHS leaders are clear that just leaves them running to stand still. If they want to solve some of these bigger problems, then it's going to need to be above that. And I think there's big questions about what is going to be achieved in the next couple of years. What are the sort of milestones along the way?
OK, for now. Tomorrow. Thank you, Rest of Today's top stories.
Yes, let's bring up to speed on the situation in the Middle East. Blasts have been heard across Lebanon's capital, Beirut, overnight after the Israeli military pledged to begin targeting Hezbollah's financial sites. Our international correspondent Alex Rossi's in Lebanon and has the latest.
We think there was at least 12 strikes, mainly in Hezbollah's stronghold in Dahir, which is just over there. You can still see some smoke on the horizon, on the skyline, from where those airstrikes were hit. Now, last night we heard loud explosions. We also saw flashes of orange and yellow as those bombs were dropped. Now, Israel says that it is continuing to trying to degrade Hezbollah. This institution, it says, was involved in financing the organisation, buying arms for it, and therefore it claims it was a legitimate target. Now, we've heard from this institution, Al-Qad al-Hassan. In a statement, they called the decision to target it a sign of Israel's bankruptcy and assured customers that it had taken measures to ensure their funds. Now, the evacuation orders that were put in place by the Israelis saw hundreds of people flee those areas. Remember, more than 1 million people have been displaced by the fighting so far. Now, this is clearly another escalation in this crisis. It had been hoped with the killing of Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, that there may be a path towards diplomacy, but it would appear that, if anything, the violence is intensifying.
Let's turn our attention to Moldova now, where a referendum on joining the EU hangs in the balance with the no and yes votes neck and neck. Latest results show that 50.1% of Moldovans have voted yes, 49.9% voting no, and 98% of the vote has been counted. There have been claims of widespread voter interference as votes are counted on both the country's president and that referendum to join the EU. Around 1,500 homes and businesses in Northern Ireland remain without power this morning. That's in the aftermath of Storm Ashley. Northern Ireland Electricity has been working to restore power to more than 10,000 customers since the storm's first hit. Meanwhile, aircraft facing challenging conditions as they try to land, winds reaching as high as 80 miles per hour. Section of the M25 has been closed following a lorry fire. The carriageway is likely to remain closed until at least midday, National Highways has said, and drivers have been warned to avoid the area. Donald Trump has put on a shift at a McDonald's food outlet in Pennsylvania. Republican presidential candidate donned an apron to make, I quote, fries great again. It comes after his Democratic rival Kamala Harris said that she'd worked at the fast food chain when she was in college. That's a claim Mr. Trump says is made up.
Well, I'm looking for a job, and I've always wanted to work at McDonald's, but I never did. I'm running against somebody that said she did, but it turned out to be a totally phony story. So if you don't mind, I want to work the French fry counter.
Absolutely.
Okay, how much are you paying me?
Well, meanwhile, Kamala Harris has been given a 60th birthday performance from Stevie Wonder. The Democratic nominee for president was out rallying at churches in Georgia when she was joined on stage by the legendary singer.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Legend. Now, we've got a special report on life inside Europe's death drug capital, which is Glasgow. A so-called safer drug consumption room was due to open there today, but it's been delayed. Here's our Scotland correspondent, Conor Gillis, and a warning: his report contains footage of substance abuse.
What have you got on you today, then?
I've got some heroin.
It's 11 a.m. on the front line of Europe's drugs epidemic. How much did that cost you?
The needles are free, and that cost me £10. £10, you know what I mean? And that's 20 ml of heroin.
How quick can you get it?
In 10 minutes.
Chris is 41, a painter and decorator turned heroin addict. Homeless, surviving in a tent, wondering if his next hit will be the one that kills him.
I just really need to get it in me.
Right,
You know what I mean?
we'll let you go on. Overwhelmed by his cravings, Chris is lured to this dark, damp, dangerous corner.
It's really disgusting having to do this, you know what I mean?
Do you ever think that you don't know what's in that and that could be your last hit?
To be honest, mate, that'd be a blessing. To the way my life is, you know. Dying seems like a better life.
Glasgow has the highest rate of drugs deaths in Europe, a shameful scourge Scotland has failed to shake off. And here are the daily pavement patrols known as the Rapid Response Squad, clearing up the dangerous aftermaths of back alleys turned heroin havens, metres from Scotland's busiest shopping district.
This is one of the spots where
Chris says he's been waiting 6 months for rehab, shoplifting to fund his addiction.
I'm spending £20 for one bag. You get 2 for £30. So you've got to buy 2 for £30.
And is that a day?
Right, that's per hit. So you're having like 5 hits a day, which is costing £150.
Could this be part of the solution, the so-called safe consumption unit preparing to open a mile down the road? This will be the UK's first dedicated place where addicts will be able to take their illegal substances under medical supervision without the fear of arrest by police. The idea is to drive everything off the streets and indoors. It's a pilot that's been years in the making. Do you think the safe drug room will make a difference?
I think if you're in that area, yes, but do people actually think it's a trap? I don't think they're that level of trust.
Just tell me what happened.
So basically, I was attacked, drugged and raped and dumped in a derelict car park. So that's a skin graft.
This is Vicky. We're protecting her identity as she gets clean after being hooked on heroin and crack, left for dead in 2019.
I had been dumped and thrown out of a moving car, and I kind of rolled over onto my arm and cut off the circulation. So they had to cut away all the dead stuff, the muscle and all that.
She believes she was set up to fail and welcomes any help on offer here in Glasgow.
I was born into drugs. My mum and dad were drug addicts all their life. I was kind of born rattling, eh? My mum actually gave me my first crack pipe at 14.
For the consumption rooms, I agree with it, but I don't know if a lot of people's going to use it.
58-year-old Ricky has depended on drugs his whole life. He knows all too well how difficult the war on drugs is.
Well, most of the people I grew up with are dead and have died with drugs. I hope it does make a difference because it will save people's lives. You know what I mean? Because if there are people out there injecting in the overdose, right, and they're there themselves, there's nothing there to help them.
This is a city clambering for solutions in an emergency where the daily drumbeat of deaths continues to ravage those who are always at the edge of society. Conor Gillis, Sky News, Glasgow.
Well, earlier on Breakfast, I spoke to Irvin Welsh, the author of Trainspotting. He told me that decriminalisation should not be ruled out to help the people who are turning to drugs.
Everybody, particularly young people, have got the need for compelling drama, and they're not getting it anywhere else. They're not getting it through the world of work. They're not getting that kind of drama, that interface. So they're getting it with each other in terms of scoring, in terms of conflict, in terms of trying to find a hierarchy in the gangs that are issuing and dealing with all these drugs. So I think these are the issues that need to be addressed. And if you can decriminalise it, if you can take it away from this kind of sort of whole underground culture, then perhaps maybe it's a stage.
Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News. Fed up of paying over the odds for concert tickets? We'll tell you about a new bill that's hoping to fix that. And a new movie about the Lion of London Bridge, the man who fought off knife-wielding attackers in 2017.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Do you fear a fourth indictment? Does your government owe an apology to the British home children?
Great to see you.
Does your government owe them an apology? The fact that they were intercepted, does that indicate a military weakness on the part of Iran?
No, no, no.
Free, wherever you get your news. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. You can feel a devastating power. It had been a difficult night in a deadly storm.
Bang, bang. You can hear it hitting the windows.
Our houses are okay.
It's depressing. As bad as all of this is, it could have been much worse. Today, this land they call sacred is at the heart of America's electric car revolution.
To me, it's a sacred ground.
The white gold rush is a race that Biden doesn't want to lose. I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world. Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States, it would appear is about to learn his fate.
Escort coming out!
San Quentin houses America's largest death row. They rarely allow cameras onto the condemned block.
James Matthews, Sky News.
I want to be treated equally like everyone else. It's one step closer to getting out, to getting off death row.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
Are you diminished by claims that you're a racist?
Question?
Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding. What do you call him, sir?
He's from Sky News. He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Coming up in a moment, joined by the head of the Patients Association about the PM's calling on the public to engage in a national conversation about how to rebuild the NHS. Plus, we'll be joined by the senator who interrupted a speech by the King in Australia, accusing him of being a genocidalist. But first, a new movie is being produced looking into the life of the man dubbed the Lion of London Bridge, who fought off knife-wielding attackers during the 2017 terror attack. Roylana suffered multiple injuries as he took on the attackers in Borough Market. He's with us now, along with Dougie Brimson, who is directing and producing the movie. Hello, gentlemen. It's good to see you. Thank you for coming in. How are you now? Is everything healed?
Yeah, everything's fine now. Eventually got over it over the last few years.
Yeah, want to know more about it in a second, but let's bring in Dougie as well, if I may. Dougie, you decided that you wanted to make a movie about what Roy had done.
Yeah, I mean, I'd been approached a couple of years ago now with the idea of doing it when Roy was ready, and because he wasn't ready at that time. He hadn't fully recovered from the mental side of things, and to be fair to him, he still hasn't. And his book came out earlier this year, and when his book came out, it was, now he's ready. And we spoke again, and a couple of weeks ago we decided, let's go for it. There's so much interest in this story. The fact that we're sitting here talking to you on Sky News for an independent movie is unheard of. So, yeah, it's going to be exciting.
Tell me as much as you want to, looking back, Roy, what you remember about that night.
I remember the night. I mean, it was a nice night, evening, having a lot of busy people out. I mean, then obviously there was a terror attack with 3 people. 47 people got stabbed, 8 people got killed. It was just a night, 10 minutes of rampage that I'd probably say shouldn't happen in London at night. Luckily, I'm here talking to you still. I was stabbed up 8 times. Over the years, it took a lot out of me. I had to do things myself, like my own counselling. I got no compensation for it. Over the years, people come up to me saying thank you, I've saved their lives. So I probably saved countless lives. I've just been awarded the Royal Humane Society silver medal after 7 years. I'm still up for the George Cross. But yes, it took its toll on me for about 3 years after. But yeah, it was a mad night in London. That should never have happened.
No, no.
Yeah.
Dougie, Roy's too bashful to say, but he saved a lot of lives, didn't he?
Yeah, they estimate he saved 30 lives that night. This is going to form the essence of the story. The background to why he never got the George Medal and still hasn't received his compensation. It's a terrible injustice. And it's been compared, not by us, to the post office scandal, and it's nowhere near on that scale, but to Roy it is, because it's happening to him and it's continuing to happen to him. And we want to explore not only what happened that night, but the aftermath of this, what is a terrible injustice at the hands of the establishment, we believe.
Is that how you feel?
Yeah, I do that. I mean, they've only showed me one little bit of CCTV. A lot of that I've had to go do myself by talking to people to find out where I ended up. I mean, I ended up where they got shot, the 3 of them, and that was a trauma in itself, watching them get shot. They nearly attacked me again, but I've never been shown the CCTV of that. I don't know why.
Do you want to see it?
I would like to. Now, I've been through like things where you go over things with the counselling. I've had to do things myself. What door did I come out of? This and that. I don't know why. Even in the inquest, I was only mentioned 3 or 4 times. Now, about the 8 that died, I'll come off worse. But as I say, by me getting injured so much, I've had people saying thank you, I've saved their lives, which means a lot for me.
Just remind our viewers what you did in order to save so many lives.
They came through the doors. They barged through the doors, which I put myself in length of them. There's 3 of them, and they started stabbing me straight away. And I just had to start fighting for my life. But it's give people time to get out the back of the restaurant, because it was like major panic in there.
He's very modest about this.
Yeah, it give people
what
time.
He did by confronting one, the other 2 came back to help their mates.
Yeah.
So he literally freed off 2 incidents at the same time, which allowed a lot of people to escape. It's quite incredible.
And I was lucky to come out there alive, myself. I mean, I've saved my own life, but I saved someone else's life. But there's quite a few that, over the years, have come up to me and had a few tears. Yeah.
Do you remember your time in hospital?
The hospital
you were in
time,
complete
yeah.
shock, weren't you?
I was in complete shock. It was in lockdown because it was election time. I had armed guard on there. I mean, I was told over the years that I was on the Isis terror list by the counter-terrorism. But over the years, it does take its toll on you. It does eventually come through certain things. You never get through the major trauma of it all. Over the years, you try to. You have to.
How are you going to try and depict this in the movie?
We'll be brutally honest about what happened that night, and we're not going to whitewash the facts, surrounding what happened afterwards in the stuff that came out in the press about Roy. He was certainly no angel all the time, and we won't whitewash that. We have absolutely no intention of, our intention is to tell the truth about what happened, but the incident in question is going to be full on. We've described it as our Saving Private Ryan moment for the movie, and that's where we'll open.
And do you think, Roy, that might give you more trauma?
No,
or do you think it'll give you closure?
I think it will be quite good going through it again.
Sorry if I can interrupt. There will be a lot of discussions about whether Roy should be on set when we do that, for obvious reasons, because we don't want to traumatise him. But we're going to be very careful to replicate it as accurately as we possibly can.
Yeah, I think I'd like to, as Dudley said, I'd like to give as much detail as possible as it was, what I can remember of. And
Are there still gaps that you don't remember what happened?
oh, there will be certain times, yeah. I mean, I remember knocking on an ambulance car, asking for help, and he drove away, things like that. And then I remember waking up again when the police told me to get down, and then the firing started, so I was right next to all the action when it happened afterwards. But between that time, I must have been in and out of consciousness, walking up that road, which obviously you don't remember. I'd like to have seen the CCTV, but I do remember the major things where the shooting started, which was a loud bullets right next to me.
How long did it take you to get to hospital?
That was about 5 minutes. I think we went to St Thomas's, and I do remember, because I thought I'd just been stabbed here once, and they was telling me my ear was hanging off, I'd been stabbed in my ear, and they're pouring blood. And I do remember going over the bumps really fast. I think my ribs were broken, and yeah, I was in a major way, and he just kept holding his hand, hold on there. And I never said thank you personally to the two police officers. I tried over the years. There must be something else there, which I don't know why I couldn't say thank you personally, but I always passed the message on to them.
Yeah, maybe they want their own privacy.
Well, they got me there quick. And another one saved my life,
Your life, didn't they?
Which I'm grateful for, yeah.
Yeah, I often wonder what it must be like when it's just a normal, I think it was a Saturday night, wasn't it?
It was a normal Saturday.
And you're just doing
It was
your
lovely.
thing.
I remember it was a hot day that the derby was on, the Champions League football was on. And I had a little fiver win on the derby, I remember it, or each way one. And I had a couple of drinks that night. And Borough Market's a nice place. It's still busy now, which is good. But, I mean, hope these things never happen again. But in the way the world is now, it is happening, isn't it?
We need more people like Roy, don't we?
Absolutely. I mean, as a veteran, in a few days' time, we'll be celebrating or remembering those who made the ultimate sacrifice, and they were all guys just like Roy.
Yeah.
And we've got very few heroes, real heroes in this country at the moment. Roy is one of those heroes, and he deserves the recognition.
It was nice being in hospital when I come down finally to have from the hospital, like upstairs, they finally let me down, and an old lady came up to me and said, like, thank you, meant a lot. It was good.
I'm sure. I can see that you're still traumatised by it, though, Roy.
Yeah,
so
yeah, of course. It'll always be.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Thank you both for coming in.
A pleasure.
Appreciate it.
You're
Come back
welcome.
and talk to us once the movie's
Absolutely,
made, won't you?
yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we'll do. Thank you, Kate.
Look after yourself.
Yeah, cheers, thank you.
Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News. Your opportunity to tell the government how the NHS can be fixed, but will it make a difference? We'll speak to the head of the Patients Association of the NHS. That's coming up next. And the remarkable moment, a message in a bottle, was pulled ashore over 1,000 miles away. That to come. Stay tuned. again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Coming up, we're going to be speaking to the Australian senator who interrupted the King to call him a genocidalist. That to come.
Certainly. Well, before that, though, our top stories for you this morning. As Kate has been saying, a senator has interrupted King Charles's speech in the Australian Parliament, yelling at him, describing him as genocidal before being removed by security.
Give us our land back! Give us what you stole from us! Our bones, our skulls, our babies, our people! You destroyed our land!
Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has launched the biggest ever consultation on the health service, calling for patient experiences and ideas. Beirut has been rocked by at least 10 explosions overnight as Israel's campaign against Hezbollah continues to escalate. And the referendum in Moldova on joining the EU is neck and neck. Latest results put the yes vote on 50.2% and 49.8% of people saying no.
Government's launched a new online platform where people are able to share their experiences of the health service in order to best repair the NHS. Joined now by the Chief Exec of the Patients Association, Rachel Power. Hi, Rachel. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. What do you think should be top of the list?
Thanks for inviting me. Top of the list, I think, for us is the engagement directly with patients. So we really hear about patients' experience to inform the development of that plan. We hear a lot from patients at the moment around struggling to access GP appointments, dentistry, long waiting lists. These all need to get addressed through the long-term plan, but also through shorter measures to address those issues now.
Any suggestions?
In what way?
And how to fix that problem?
How to fix it? Well, I think for us, what we welcome quite a lot in the long-term plan is the role of patient partnership and working directly with patients to understand the issues that they're facing and use that information to address the problems within the NHS.
The government's suggesting tech is one of the valued ways forward. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. I think we need to be careful, though, that we don't leave people behind who may be experiencing digital poverty or digital exclusion. But we did work with patients directly around the role of the NHS app. And what patients tell us is they want services to be joined up around them. And that is how tech and the single health record can really help address that.
Patient passports, a good idea?
Sorry?
Patient passports, are they a good idea?
Yes, I think so. Patients, in a piece of work that we did in Nottingham recently, patients told us that that's what they wanted. They wanted whichever consultant, especially if you've got multiple conditions, that they don't have to repeat that story every time they go to see somebody around their health.
And what about smartwatches?
Again, they'll work for some people, but they're not going to work for everybody. And it's about making sure that whatever the solutions are, that they're accessible to all and that we don't leave communities behind. You know, we've heard a lot around health inequalities and people, and especially people living in poverty. So we've got to make sure the solutions going forward will work for people like that as well. And that's most important.
Productivity needs to improve, is what we're being told. Do you have any suggestions on where the government might start with that?
Well, I think what we need to do is we need to look at the admin issue as well. Like we hear from a lot of patients who don't hear about their appointments or can't get through to somebody on the phone to say that they can't attend an appointment. I think that's an area that needs addressing. I think the role of shared decision making, working with patients to understand what's important to patients, will really help in efficiencies and savings within the NHS.
OK, and as far as having this big debate, if you will, we're being told it's the biggest that's ever been commissioned. Is that a good idea?
Yeah, I'm really excited about it because I think the long-term future of the NHS has to be developed in partnership, and that has to be with patients and frontline staff who, you know, are working extremely hard to meet the needs of patients and patients who are struggling to access the services they need.
Great stuff, Rachel. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay.
Thanks. Now, if you thought the UK's vote on the EU, in our case to leave it, was tight, let me tell you about what's happening in Moldova right now. A referendum there on joining the EU hangs in the balance, with 50.2% saying yes, 49.8% saying no. Our Europe correspondent Siobhan Robbins reports from Chisinau.
For these campaigners, an historic day. Millions of Moldovans on Sunday voted in a presidential election, an EU referendum, effectively making a choice between a future with Europe or Russia. Are you feeling confident, President?
Today is about Moldova. Everybody should go out and vote.
Arriving to cast her ballot, the pro-Western president. She backs yes, arguing adding the aim of joining the EU to the constitution will make it harder for pro-Russian forces to derail.
Today is about Moldova, and it's about voting for a peaceful and free country.
Russia's been accused of trying to meddle with the result and stop Moldova leaning west. But first-time voter Vlad believes their future lies in the EU.
There's a lot of benefits, better wages, better living conditions. I've heard a lot of people that say if the referendum doesn't pass, if my son doesn't get elected, they will just take their families and leave.
Just before the vote, police made arrests claiming 130,000 people had been bribed to vote no by a network linked to Russian-based tycoon Ilan Shaw. Officers say millions has been pumped into disinformation campaigns. Moscow and Shaw deny any involvement. In the northern city of Orhei, where Ilan Shaw used to be mayor, many still feel closer to Russia. He's our friend, says flower seller Valentina when asked about President Putin. She and her husband are voting no. I'll vote against it. I've seen how people live in the European Union and I don't like it, Gregory says, adding life was better in the Soviet Union and he doesn't want to be ordered around by the EU. As provisional votes were counted, no pulled ahead, sparking a warning from the president that democracy was under attack.
We have clear evidence that these criminal groups aim to buy 300,000 votes, a fraud of unprecedented scale. Their objective was to undermine a democratic process. Their intention was to spread fear and panic in the society. We will not back down from defending democracy and freedom.
The final results expected to be confirmed later on Monday. But this vote's already exposed clear divides over where Moldova's loyalties should lie. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News, Moldova.
Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you.
Give us what you stole from us! Our bones, our skulls, our babies, our people! You destroyed our land! Give us...
I'll speak to the Australian senator who's yelled, "You are not my king," at an event with Charles.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Do you fear a fourth indictment? Is it a draw? Does your government owe an apology to the British home children? Great to see you. Does your government owe them an apology? The fact that they were intercepted, does that indicate a military weakness on the part of Iran? No. Free, wherever you get your news. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. You can feel a devastating power. It had been a difficult night in a deadly storm.
Bang, bang. You can hear it hitting the windows.
Our houses are okay.
It's depressing.
As bad as all of this is, it could have been much worse. Today, this land they call sacred is at the heart of America's electric car revolution.
To me, it's a sacred ground.
The white gold rush is a race that Biden doesn't want to lose. I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world. Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States, it would appear is about to learn his fate.
Escort coming out!
San Quentin houses America's largest death row. They rarely allow cameras onto the condemned block.
James Matthews, Sky News.
I want to be treated equally like everyone else. It's one step closer to getting out, to getting off death row.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
You're diminished by claims that you're a racist.
Question?
Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding. What do you call him, sir?
He's from Sky News. He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
If you forgot your pajamas, Emirates has got you covered. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Wilf's with us. Lots for you to go at today, Wilf. Morning.
Yes, indeed, Kay. And the main focus at the top of the hour will be the Prime Minister and the Health Secretary. Of course, are going to launch their national conversation. They're calling it on the government's 10-year plan to rebuild the health service, something I know you've been talking about throughout the morning, as indeed were we on Sky yesterday as well. So that's kicking off at about 10 a.m. At a hospital in East London. We'll go to it live and listen to some of the remarks made by both the Health Secretary and the Prime Minister and have reaction to it. We'll also have some reaction to your interview about to take place with the Senator, independent Senator in Australia, Lidia Thorpe, who, as you've been discussing, shouted at the King, "You're not my king," and very much looking forward to that and to reacting to it. And we're also going to be building up to the US election, 2 weeks away, of course, and both of the candidates out campaigning in all sorts of different ways over the weekend. We've got a great guest to discuss that with just 2 weeks to go.
OK, for now, thank you. Dynamic pricing left some Oasis fans paying more than they expected for the much-coveted reunion tickets. What's going to happen?
So the government is considering a law change so that people who are looking to buy concert tickets, who sometimes wait many hours in an online queue, will know the maximum price they're going to face before they join that queue. And the idea is to make that whole process more transparent and to make that process more enjoyable for the consumer. Because what happens these days is people will join an online queue, they think they're going to be paying a certain price, as we saw with the Oasis tickets over the summer, which started at 148, but by the time some people got to the front of the queue, it went up to 355. And having waited in a queue for many hours, when you get that and you've made your plans, you've waited all that time, you're sometimes faced with a split-second decision to decide whether you're going to pay or not. And, you know, some people say that's exploitation of customers.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not a big fan, are you, of Oasis, so it didn't really bother you?
It didn't really bother me either, but it just the concept of the idea of a massive reunion tour. Oh, people might want to come. Please stop. Like, people aren't that stupid. It's like, I've talked about this, like going to the cheese counter on a Christmas Eve and being like, oh, people want cheese? Oh, we've got to put the price up. Of course you had demand. Madness.
But the government are at least looking at it.
Yes, they've stepped in. Some people say wrongly, some people say this is how the market functions and they shouldn't step in. But Keir Starmer, remember at Prime Minister's questions, talked about how important it was to step in.
Yeah, absolutely. When will we know?
So it's being written up now, the bill, and probably in the next few months there'll be some sort of discussion on it and whether it should go ahead before it becomes enshrined in statutes.
OK. For now, thank you. Thanks a lot. Let's go back to Australia, where King Charles' royal tour has been derailed by a senator who's used an event in Parliament House to accuse the King of genocide before being escorted out by security. Have a listen.
Give us our land. Give us what you stole from us. Our bones, our skulls, our babies, our people. You destroyed our land. Give us a treaty. We want a treaty in this country. You are a genocider. This is not your land. This is not your land. You are not our king. You are not our king.
Senator Thorpe is with us now. Hello to you, Senator. Thank you for taking the time to join us here on Sky News Breakfast. Why did you do it?
I did it for truth-telling, global truth-telling about the royals who caused so much devastation to not only our people in this country, but Indigenous people around the world. We don't have a treaty in this country. We've been calling for decades and decades for a treaty. We just want peace. To see the incarceration rates of our people in this country, our jails are full of Aboriginal people. We have thousands, 23,000 Aboriginal children that have been taken from their families. We have over 600 deaths in custody where no one has ever been held accountable. We have our bones and our skulls still in his possession or his family's possession. We want that back. We want our land back, and we want your king to take some leadership and sit at the table and discuss a treaty with us, because treaty is what will bring us peace. The kings before him and the queens before him did treaties with other nations or other countries, but we are still fighting for a treaty here, and until we have peace, we must continue to resist.
He acknowledged, recognised grievances within his speech, and then towards the end of the speech you interrupted him and called him genocidal. Why is that the best way to deal with this?
I just did a previous interview, with all due respect, and I did not once interrupt his speech. I respectfully waited.
Question. I'm sorry, I am going to interrupt you because I've only got a limited amount of time, Senator. Why did you call him genocidal?
Which is the King's speech.
Why did you call him genocidal?
I waited till the end.
Why did you call him genocidal?
There's thousands of massacre sites in this country from invasion, and someone needs to answer for that.
And that's the King.
And if he is the successor, then he needs to answer.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
One of your colleagues described you as abusing your position, and your intervention was disgraceful. How do you respond to that?
I'm not fussed about what people say about me. I will continue to fight for justice for my people. We are the real sovereigns in this country. The King is not our sovereign. The King lives in your country. He's from your country. He can't be our King. So I don't really, I have the support of Aboriginal people around this country. I have the support from my grandmother. I have support from elders around the country. You might look, put up the scary photos, but I will continue to resist. And it's only when other people have their children removed, when their families are incarcerated, when you have your land taken from you, that you will understand what I'm talking about. But I understand that, it's all about portraying me as an angry black woman. Well, yeah, I'm angry. I'm angry because I see too many of our people dying, too many people incarcerated. We don't have any land. Your King and his previous kings and queens stole that from us, and we want it back, and we won't stop resisting.
But
so thank you very much for your time. I'm at an event and I must go, but I appreciate you taking the time and having me on your program.
Oh, I was going to say the same to you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Really appreciate you taking the time, and thank you very much. So that was the senator who, at the end of the King's speech, when he did, according to those that were in the room, recognise the grievances, some of the grievances that were raised by the senator. She went up to where the King was seated with the Queen, in no way threatened him, but did say that he was genocidalist and that she wanted her land back and that she wanted the babies back. So that was some of the comments that she made to the King. It's a story, of course, that we will be covering throughout the day here on Sky News for you. And also, we'll be looking at the big idea for the NHS. What does that look like? Stay tuned. Wilfie's coming up next. I'll see you tomorrow from 7. Bye-bye for now.